February 25th to order. And I think for this evening, we do have an agenda, but I know that the first person scheduled to appear on our agenda is not available this evening. So if I may, I'm going to skip over to the library and ask you guys to make an early appearance this evening. Or you, Justin.
Or me. So Patrice isn't here, but on her behalf, she's awesome. The senior center is great, and she deserves every penny she can get.
Well done. Well done. Yes, we're in
And
session.
as for my budget presentation, did everyone get the packet?
Justin, if I may, what I'd like to do with each meeting is just introduce yourself, and we'll go around the room once very quickly, and everybody introduce themselves for our record.
Oh, so I get to go first?
You do.
Okay, I'm Justin Snook, the Public Library Director.
Thank you. Matthew's hit the table.
Matt, what was your?
Matt Wojcik, Town Administrator.
Jean Lovett, Finance Director, Town Accountant.
Lynn Mazzulli, Finance Committee.
Carol Gogolinski, Finance Committee.
Howard D'Amico, Finance Committee.
Phil Landry, Finance Committee.
Heather Moran, Finance Committee.
Sandy Kuipers, Finance Committee.
Dick Vandenberg, laryngitis, finance.
Thank you.
He's going to help you maintain that 1 hour.
15 minutes short.
Yeah.
Keep your sickness on that side of the room.
Okay, so if everyone got my packet beforehand, I'll try not to take up too much of your time. The first page is just a summary of the services we provided in FY 2019. We circulated 4,671 items directly to Douglas patrons, but we also circulated 9,389 items to other patrons or to other libraries and CWMRs. And we also circulated 15,241 digital transactions in total, 7,382 of those in Douglas, and the remainder in CWMRs. So the total cash value of the services we provided to the town on our budget of $227,000 was $608,000. The total value of the services we provided to the Commonwealth, which I don't reference in here, but like network-wide, we were worth $970,000. So the next page, just kind of story of how our budget has been in the past 5 years since I became the director. In cognizance of the town's fiscal crises at the time, we pulled every lever, pushed every button we could to keep our budget to an absolute minimum necessary, required by the state. That involved flatlining our circulation budget for 3 years. We got a stimulus the past couple years, and circulation has gone up accordingly. But our electronic circulation is set to start flatlining this year because we simply don't have the budget to sustain the use. With the introduction of the Libby app, where people are primarily using the library now to download digital books and audiobooks on their phones and computers, a lot of our use has moved to digital. We're getting to a point where almost half of our use is digital. And there was also the big stimulus that happened. The big thing is the middle schools drop everything and read program. This initiative is where the middle school principal made protected time every week for kids to be able to read. And we got every middle school student set up with a library card through the public library so that they could access our digital collections. This has led to a flourishing of reading among the students, but it's a flourishing of reading that somebody has to pay for. Prior to DEER, we had almost no circulation of juvenile and young adult materials in Overdrive. Now it's almost up to 25% of our total circulation. Between November of 2018 and 2019, we spent $4,548 on digital licenses that went to fill the demand set by middle school students. And also, we have a $5,000 monthly cap on cost per circ titles. So these aren't titles that we've bought per se, but we've enabled them in Overdrive or in Libby so that if someone borrows them, the library just gets charged a flat fee. So it's like $1.99 a circ, $2 a circ. It depends on the item and how popular it is. And about 28% of the usage of that is attributable to student accounts. And so we're reaching a point where we've had to stop buying any more juvenile or young adult materials because we've expended over 10% of our circulation budget on it, and we can't do that when we have to meet the needs of the entire community. So what we're asking for this year is an increase in our circulation line item of $11,725,000. $5,000 of that we would reserve specifically to support the schools, buying the materials that are requested by students or are placed on hold by students and that they're having to wait too long to get. And the remainder to make up for the lack of demand that we're meeting. And just a snapshot in time, whenever I created this report, we had 134 titles on hold by general patrons that they've been waiting longer for 2 weeks for. And in an era where you expect, instantaneous service whenever you click on something digitally, people are noticing that they have to wait longer for a digital item than a regular item. If you place a hold on a book, you can expect to get it in around 5 days. 5 days, 13 hours, and 30 minutes. A digital loan takes over 45 days to fill, simply because we're not spending enough on that part of the collection. But, if we wanted to just fill the demand, right now at this point in time, we would need to allocate $7,270 on 134 titles placed on hold by, the general population, and 867 that are placed on hold by the school students who have been waiting longer than 2 weeks. We've also got 55 titles worth almost $3,000 and 48 titles worth almost, or a little more than $1,000 requested by adults and students, respectively. And, that's things that, someone who lives in Douglas has went to the website, wasn't able to get because it's not available in any consortium, and clicked on a button specifically asking us to buy it. So, that's like direct collection development. Like, that's the dream. That's what you want to fill. That's the demand you want to meet, because it puts things in people's hands that they want, and it also builds an incredible amount of goodwill among the community. So that's the driving, deviation of my budget request this year from what was projected in the original 5-year plan. The rest is just kind of, small stuff. That, do you want me to go into it, or?
No.
Okay.
I don't. Maybe someone else will. Bear with me for a minute. Justin, I'm trying to understand on what I've got in front of me. You've got the library 610 up in the upper left corner. Right? Thank you. Yeah. So I'm looking at line item 55,500, circulation material. Mm-hmm. And that seems to show an increase, right, 43,441 to 55,998.
Yep, that's the circulating material item that we are, that's the books and the e-books.
And that's not exactly that number of 11,725, but is that pretty much what we're talking about?
It's close. I've got it, see, on page,
Very close, but not exact.
let me just go through. I know it deviates. That's why I spent so much time talking about it.
But is that where it shows up in line item 55,500?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Oh, it's already been factored in here.
Okay.
The last time I saw this spreadsheet, it looked different. Oh, because this is version 211, 2020. Thanks for sharing that with me, Jean.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so it looks like this already takes into account my request. And total budget 253, 860. Yeah, so like what the trustees approved for me to request and what is on this sheet now at this point align almost exactly.
Okay.
I'm $1 shy somewhere.
Personnel, because
Oh,
we
wait, no.
have to round up each individual person, and not just the total compensation line. Because you've got pennies after each person, so we round up, you end up with an extra $1. This is an ongoing conversation with the finance director, the town administrator. You do not want any more detail.
I don't want any more details.
Rounding up $1.
It's the only time we do that.
Only time you ever do that is one way. or
Thank
another.
you. Thank you.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars in the budget. We don't want to go back to town meeting for 20 cents.
There you go.
So Justin, would this proposal, if met, help alleviate that pressure on the long outstanding title requests? you know, the 48 titles worth $1,000 request for purchase by students unfulfilled, that segment, is that designed to be alleviated by this budget request? Or-
Yeah, that's the driving need that leads to this budget request. That's precisely the hole I'm trying to plug.
And the theory is, with this request, the 253,860, without knowing exactly how the math would work out, you'd be looking to bring down that digital loan 45-day number substantially back into
Yes.
the 2-week period?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, okay. Questions? Just then, just real quick, following up on that same idea, I'm embarrassed to ask this in open forum and with some of the groups here. Middle school defined today, 4th through 6th?
6 through 8.
6 through 8. 6 through 8, okay. So these are 6th through 8th graders in this new program, and I think I saw at least one head shaking in a positive way. This has gotten them, you said library cards. So during the school day, they're getting opportunity to access those volumes, and if they're there.
Once
they're
a
getting
week,
time.
I think, is when they have protected time, is
Oh, it's daily.
daily.
Protected time, and
Yes.
so they're really doing this all online then, right?
For the most part, I think that some students bring their own books,
Okay,
but they can't access it online.
but if we.
The Overdrive app has been baked into the iPads, well, now it's Chromebooks
Chromebooks now.
that they loan out.
But if we reduce this further and further, they'll have more access right at that moment to the titles they're looking for, they're wanting.
That's the idea.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. And is the perception that this budget request will do that sufficiently to get them that access?
Yeah, I wish we had Mr. Delaney here to answer that question. So, yeah, you want to come up?
Yeah, sure, yep, yep.
Justin actually
Sir?
approached, I'm sorry, Fred
Please
Argle,
introduce yourself.
School Committee
Thank
Chairman.
you.
So, Justin actually approached, I think it was October or November, I think the first time he approached us on this, and let us know that he was having an issue and that there was going to be some expense involved. At the time, we asked him to follow up with Mr. Delaney, our middle school principal, just to see what could be done. I think my biggest concern was, are the titles they're requesting appropriate? Do they need as many titles as they want? There's a lot of duplicate titles.
Sure, sure.
Someone gets a book, all of a sudden 12 people want to read the same book. Do we have to have all people reading, or can they read
Yeah,
consecutively, or something like that? I apologize, I didn't follow up on this to see if Mr.
Yes.
Delaney has connected. It doesn't sound like, we've resolved that issue. I do think we would like to resolve it, so, if Mr. Delaney tells us this $5,000 is well worth it, I'd gladly have you reduce our appropriation by $5,000 to help fund that for us. We are very happy with the program, so.
But the 5,000 is in here, right? Is in the request.
Yes, it's baked into the
Right,
request.
right,
But
right.
if you need $5,000 to fund it,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure how I'm not sure if we can transfer those to Mr. Smith's budget or how that works, but.
I guess my question is, for $1,000 or $2,000 more, does it reduce the average from 45 to 12 or 13 down to 3 or 4? Or do you feel like you're at the delta, like you said,
that's what I think.
of they can find another alternative?
Yeah, I just want to make sure,
Readily enough.
that we're kind of, being efficient with it too.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
ordering 12 licenses when we get
Yeah.
away with 3 or 4 just because,
They'll find it, they'll find another
Yeah, it's
resource.
that kind of,
Okay,
so.
okay.
Yeah, it's hard to tell precisely what it'll do.
Yeah.
The program is great.
yeah.
It's gotten a lot of kids interested, and it's had a ripple effect upward. So like kids actually showing their parents what they can do with the library. And
Yeah.
we've had like a slew of new grown-ups actually using the library's digital resources now.
Great, fantastic. Okay, thank you very much.
We just got to fund it.
Okay, all right.
Justin, are some of these requests available in the actual book form in the library at the school or in the library downtown?
Not a lot of them are available in the libraries in the schools. The schools, there's not a lot available there in terms of materials. In the public library, there is some. Sometimes there's not. A lot of the disconnect is just, like kids don't come to the library as much anymore, and it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't really have a way to get there. Because they don't trust, people don't trust kids to walk from the high school to the middle school to the library anymore, which used to be the case. And parents are all so busy and stretched that they don't have time to ferry kids here and there to pick up a book. So if they can access it on the device that's already been provided to them by the school, it alleviates a lot of it makes it easier for them to read. And, that's what we want to do, is we want to inspire kids to read and develop a love of reading, because that's the single biggest, indicator of positive lifetime outcomes, is how much reading material someone is exposed to as a child.
Makes sense.
I may have missed a little bit of this at the beginning, but the extra that you're asking for is all electronic and not tangible books per se.
Well, the
What percentage of it is electronic?
5,000 of it, which, is a little bit less than half, I would earmark specifically for digital electronic titles for the schools.
Okay.
And the remainder, I would divvy out between our, physical collections and digital collections, just to try to see where the need is. Because what I do is I monitor the queues. I monitor the queues of, what people are waiting in the catalog and what people are waiting on in Overdrive. And then I have to weigh whether the license is worth it and whether it's the right kind of license, because some licenses expire after 12 months, after 24 months, and I want to avoid those. Some are good for a certain number of circs, and those are my favorite because they tend to be cheap, and I know exactly how much I'm getting out of them. Or one copy, one use, it stays in our collection forever. And once we buy it, Douglas patrons will always have first dibs on it in the consortium. So for a while, until I click a button, the title's only available to Douglas residents. You have to have a Douglas library card with, beginning with a 2046600. After a period of time, if it has not been used in a month, if no one has a hold on it, and if circulation is, going down, then I'll share it with the consortium, which means that other libraries can take advantage of it. But if a Douglas patron ever places it on hold, it doesn't matter if there's 200 other people waiting, the Douglas patron will get it first.
Other follow-up was on your digital loan over 45 days. Is it like an average or for you guys, and where does that stand versus other?
That's our library's average. I don't know what the other library's averages are.
No idea locally what else it is? Okay.
I think it aligns pretty closely through the consortium, but I can't say library to library what it is. Like ours was like 45.01, and then the consortium I think was like 45.8 something.
Yeah. But
that
that's a
varies
pretty decent
every
amount of
day.
time to wait for electronic access, right? So.
And a lot of librarians aren't investing in this. A lot of communities aren't investing in it. They're just writing off Overdrive as something that the consortium should fund, and the library, it's part of the consortium. And I'm really starting to get, frustrated with some of my fellow directors because they're afraid of the technology and they're not staying up with the cutting edge, and they're not meeting the demand where it is. If people were having to wait this long for, books, it would be an utter disgrace. But for some reason, it's okay for them to wait this long to read something, on their phone or Kindle. That's just my little rant. I'm sorry.
That was good.
No, it's a nice rant. Good rant.
Anyone else? Justin, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go have a trustee meeting now.
Justin.
You want this back?
You can have it.
Thanks, Justin. I like these sheets of paper. They're really big.
I missed that much time.
Look at that. So if we could bring up the Board of Health, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bob Brazo, and I'm chairman of the board of health.
Kristen Harris, administrative assistant.
Thank you. So if you would, just walk us through anything
I don't know if I can do as well
significant.
as Justin did,
You did
but
great.
I will do my best.
All
How's
right.
that? Okay. What I'd like to do is I'd like to give you an overview, first of all, of what exactly we do. So basically, Board of Health, we're responsible for
animal inspector. We're also responsible for nursing, and let's see, we have landfill maintenance and monitoring of wells. You asked what monitoring of wells is. Basically, we have we also have to maintain the cap on the transfer station. The old landfill, that's what I wanted to say, landfill. So we're responsible for that. Basically, the way it operates is, let's see, we have, the transfer station itself has open containers. We have two 30-yard open containers that we, all the bulk items like mattresses and couches and that type of thing go into that. Those two, one container, and another container, all the metals go into that. We used to actually collect money for the metals when the market was, strong. But right now, we're collecting very, very little from that. Mainly, most of our funds come from the sale of stickers, and we've just changed over to selling stickers once a year, and only once a year. So we've cut down on some paperwork, handling of money, and things like that. We also have two compactors for the general trash type thing. We have recyclables that are really, the commodities market right now is not very good, so we used to be making money on the cardboard and things like that. We would recycle them through Blackstone Recycling Facility, and they were paying us to recycle the cardboard. Now it's the opposite way around. Now we're paying them to dispose of the cardboard. So, let's see, what we're trying to do is the way it works is we have transportation fees. Transportation fees are the big expense that we have to deal with as far as the transfer station is concerned. And we're trying to reduce that. We're trying to look at different ways to reduce the transfer fees and keep the sticker price down as much as we possibly can, but it's kind of difficult with the population growth here in the town as well. So I don't know what else I can really tell you. If you have any questions.
Can I jump in a little bit?
Of course.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
So you have a couple sheets in front of you.
Yep.
The Board of Health, the Animal Inspector,
Yep.
Nursing,
Yep.
Monitor Well, and Landfill.
Yep.
Those fall into the general fund,
Yep.
and that's what the, those
Yep.
fees come from the taxpayer dollars and
Yep.
miscellaneous. The transfer station, so I guess I would ask if there's any questions on those first before, you think you jumped to transfer station after, and I just want to talk a little bit about that before.
Sorry, the only question I have is nursing went up from previous years to up to 13,000 for this year, and the request for next year?
Yeah, she's planning to, the nurse is planning to put more hours in this year. So budgeted for the additional hours.
What would those be for?
She may not, complete all the hours that we had budgeted for, but am I correct?
That's correct.
What's
She's
driving
budgeted
that?
for 1 day per week. Is the 13,000. So in previous years, she hadn't worked that day.
Right.
It does close into the general fund if she doesn't spend it, but they are keeping, that budget for 19 was 13 as well. She just didn't work the hours. I think they're finding that the demand, we talk about this, the demand is going to increase for next year, and that's why they requested the state, the 13 budget.
I'm sorry, I'm a little vacuous on this. What does she do, nursing-wise? I'm trying to understand who she serves. or how it works? I have no idea.
Actually,
It's my,
Kristen works with her every day, so
So
she would know exactly
okay.
what she
she's in
does.
charge of all the, any disease, or if someone gets sick in Douglas,
Yep.
and she gets a call from the state, she's got to contact the people. Sometimes she has to go to their house weekly just to monitor them. She does blood pressure clinics.
Okay.
She does work, she gets reports from the state the whole time she's here during the day. She makes a lot of phone calls. She does a big part of the emergency planning for the town as far as the health department goes.
Okay.
So she's quite busy.
Yeah.
There's a-
Yeah,
she
just
wants to increase the hours.
my general knowledge, I'm not so,
What's driving the projection in that uptick in hours, though?
What's driving the projection
Yeah,
as
so,
far as the additional hours?
yeah, I mean, I think a comment was made that we anticipate her needing to work additional hours next year. What's the presumption underneath that?
A lot of it is emergency preparedness that she does with the state. We have to do drills. We have a lot of things to do with that, a big part of it. If there was ever, like the H1N1 clinic we did, there's a lot to it, and she's taken a huge part of that. So it's one day a week.
I think you're seeing 19 to 21.
Right.
You're not seeing 20. So I think that's the piece that you're missing. So incrementally, she's going up in this fiscal year, but you're seeing going from 19 to the budget of 21, you're missing the 20 piece.
But you said even in 19, 13 was appropriated, right?
Correct,
4,800 was
correct, yeah.
spent, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in 20, she's working more than she
So
did in
closer-
19. So it's more of an
closer, yeah,
incremental
okay.
change that you're not noticing in this budget.
Again, I'm trying to understand the delta, though, between, that $4,700 and $4,800 before, what changed in the environment that now necessitates the additional hours? Were we not doing all those emergency preps and
You outsource
plannings
a
and
lot of
such
it.
before?
Yeah, she does a lot of it now.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So it's just a shifting from
Well, yeah.
one person to another?
She was part of it, now she's taken on more of it, yeah.
Okay.
As of January, she was already expended $4,400 of her budget. So, like I said, you're not seeing you're seeing from 19 to 21, you're not seeing that
Right,
20 piece
right.
where she's already.
But now, if
working
you're
additional hours.
shedding some of that workload over to her, those hours, is that coming out of another budget area? Do we not see those hours? Is it truly a transfer from one department to another, or?
No, we work on it together, but she being the nurse, like, she's more,
It's very demanding. I mean, the job is demanding, there's no question. Does she run clinics, right?
Yep.
She do clinics?
she
She also goes to the elderly?
was, yep, she'll probably start doing that
Right,
again.
right. She has a little more time now to do some of the other additional things that she hasn't really been able to do as efficiently as she would like to. So this is why we're looking at the increase.
I have a question. Like visiting the elderly?
Like
Yeah.
Riddlebrook,
So,
going there and doing blood pressure clinics.
so we employ a nurse to do blood pressure clinics?
No, I mean,
Or
she does other
That's
things.
she does just that as part of
That's
job?
part of it. There's
Okay.
many, many things. If you sat in the office
Yeah.
and you actually watched what she does,
Okay,
you'd be quite impressed.
okay.
Which day does she work? You say she runs clinics. Is that done here, or does she do it at the senior center?
We used to do them here, then she did them at Riddlebrook. She was going to the senior center. Now they have, I think, someone else that goes there now.
Does she run food?
We used to do it.
So on that part, before we get to questions on the transfer station, any other questions there? First,
landfill maintenance has gone down. That's the
So on the
question. Why'd it go down? I guess I should have put a question mark at the end of it.
It really didn't. It's when the mowings took place. So there was
So it's
actually
just
3 mowings in 2019.
lawn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on when the service was rendered.
And then on the transfer station budget, Bob, that we've got in front of us, I do see line item 49905, maybe the fourth numbered line item, retained earnings. And Gene, maybe you can address that.
Yes.
Right, I see that number fluctuate. FY19 actual 56, the FY21 budget request has 99 in there.
Yes. So as I mentioned, the transfer station is an enterprise fund, which means it's similar to water sewer. It is the same as water sewer, where the money stays within the fund. So whatever you don't spend or whatever revenue you receive in excess, it's kind of like free cash for the enterprise fund. It closes into itself. The Board of Health had made a decision a number of years ago to reduce the price of the ticket sales because their retained earnings was going up, which means their savings account was going up. And they didn't want to continue to charge the users of the transfer station a lot amount to just build that account. So they had made a decision to reduce the ticket sale price and monitor the use of retained earnings. Now, just like any other budget, revenue has to equal expense. So the amount in retained earnings is a direct relation to the expense budget. Because if you look at we can only raise or charge the same amount that we take in the fiscal year previous. So in the actual transfer station permits, we sold $225,858.34 in fiscal 19. DOR is only going to let me budget for that category the same amount. They won't let me increase that. There's $300 in investment income, leaving the balance to have to come out of that retained earnings or that savings account. I have spoken with the Board of Health. They understand that that's not the best practice because it's taking money out of your savings to pay for an ongoing expenditure. However, if they have no planned use for retained earnings and they don't need it for anything else, and they don't see any planned use in 5-10 years down the road, then they're pretty much put on notice that this is not a good practice, and they're monitoring it on a yearly basis. Now, with that said, next FY20 is going to be its own little situation because, as they mentioned, the transfer station has decided to go to a once-a-year permit. So what happens is, in FY20, we are going to be collecting equivalent or close to 18 months' worth of fees instead of 12, because instead of selling twice, we're going to be selling the equivalent of 3 times. So we're going to have a little bubble in 20 as we close the year, and then in 21, they're going to go back to that once-a-year
When
fee.
is that period of time?
They're actually selling them now.
What's the,
fee?
no, well, what's the fee and what's the actual last day you can buy?
Last day would be March 1st.
March 1st.
Actually, February.
March 1st.
March 1st, okay, yeah.
So March 1st is Sunday.
Right.
So
So,
So that week.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's,
oh, you're open on Saturday?
yes.
Okay.
yes. You mean you don't take advantage?
You obviously haven't been to the transfer station.
Not, and I don't,
Nope.
Gene, I did not understand that explanation at all.
I'm sorry, what could I explain better?
So from what I've got in front of me, I thought you just suggested that FY 2020 would catch the equivalent of 3 halves, if you will.
Correct. But I'm going to have to explain that variance to the Department of Revenue, and they're not going to let me budget more because we had one blip. So they're going to look at that 19 number, and they're going to say, you're really only going to collect $225,000 a year. They're not going to say, okay, in FY 21, we'll set the recap, and it's going to
Okay,
be...
that helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The retained
So
earnings
you
you've got listed in the
this
FY
as should
21
equal
budget, 99,168. That's coming out of, if you will, a kitty of a larger amount of overall retained
Correct.
earnings? What's that kitty
They
before that
were
draw?
certified at $242,000
Before that draw?
before that draw.
Okay. And so for a few years now, we're drawing from the retained earnings in order to not have to increase the fee until we get closer to equilibrium on that?
Correct.
Okay,
Now,
okay.
if they don't spend all of their budget, like they increase the budget for other property-related services, which is really their hauling fee, their BP services that they're charging now. That's going out the contract this year.
Yes.
So we increased the budget of $220,000.
Yeah,
If they only spent 200, that additional 20...
99 will drop to 79.
Well, it won't drop, but next year retained earnings will be, it's not like it's fully spent.
I got it. Okay, okay.
And if they take in more than 225,000, which is going to increase retained earnings at the close of this year,
Right.
because you have that extra,
And even though there's a 3 and 2 event in FY 2020, your budgeting
as if there's
isn't
only two.
actually seeing that
Correct.
magic.
The
Okay.
retained earnings will go up
I
because
got
you
it.
have that extra,
Okay.
but we don't want
Okay,
to set the, I'm done.
no, keep going. But I understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to know what the fee is.
Oh, the fee is $200 sticker for a full year. And anyone 65 or over?
100 for senior.
Oh, 100 for senior.
I'm getting there.
You're not that close yet.
On that. Anything else?
I encourage you to use our transfer station, that's all I can say.
It actually is cheaper than what I pay.
We do, we do.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Hopefully,
And I like the once a year idea. I mean,
Me too.
it may be harder for people to budget it that way, but it
It really makes-
strikes me as it makes it much easier
well, the
administratively.
handling of money is a
Right.
big factor
Right.
too, you know.
Right.
Gotta
Vice
get in there
versa as
this
well.
week.
Yeah.
But
I need
Jean
the sticker.
actually said everything that I was going to say.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it weird.
A collaboration. Well done.
I
Well done.
apologize.
Oh, well,
Any other questions? Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Jean.
Have a good day.
So I have next on our agenda the school department. Is anyone here from the school department? Come on up.
I think I can give my chair up. I have nothing to do.
Apparently, a few.
We do have a quorum here this evening of our school committee. So
Okay.
we need to call our meeting to order. We have scheduled, so I'm going to call our school committee meeting for February 25th to order at 7:39 p.m. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming.
You guys already heard from Fred Argle, Chairman of the school committee.
I am Kevin Maines, Superintendent of Schools,
Brittany Keegan, Business and Operations Manager.
Okay.
and we also have some other members of the
Yes.
school committee
Yep.
here.
Becky Turnier. Kelly Grady, School.
Thank you.
And we do have some administrators who are here as well, so
Great.
Neely
Neely
Urquhart.
Urquhart,
Great.
Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services. Cindy Sosha, Primary School Principal.
John Bell, Elementary School Principal.
Josh Romano, the high school principal, will be here shortly. He's having a parent night for 8th grade parents,
Okay.
for those who might remember those days. And Mr. Delaney, who is the middle school, was unable to attend, some family.
Please don't mention to him my question earlier about what years constitute middle school.
I'll keep that on the
Right,
low.
I appreciate that. Right?
So we are going to tackle this in 3 parts. So I'm handing out something that I'm not going to go through in full, but this is what I've presented to you guys in the past. I call it my Douglas school budget in perspective. It just gives, kind of that 50,000-foot view at Douglas schools and how we compare to surrounding districts and to the state. If you want, I'll go through in detail, but I know we've got the detailed budget for you this evening, as well as some other scenarios to present to you. So, do you want a brief minute to read through it and ask if you have any questions, or do you want to give you the
How about
5-minute
highlights?
version of it?
Yeah, highlights.
Okay.
Yep.
So, we continue to rank in the lower 25% overall on a per pupil expenditure. That is considerably better than where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we consistently ranked first, second, or third lowest in the state on a per pupil expenditure basis. We are now up to 71st lowest in the state, relative to about 320 districts in the state.
What does this say 13th right off the top?
That's the average of over that time. So 13th, if you take the average of the last 11 years,
I see.
we on average ranked about 13th.
And today we're 71st,
Today we're 71st.
lowest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's on a full per pupil expenditure, which includes our out-of-district expenses.
Yeah.
When you just isolate our in-district expenses, we're 37th lowest. So what's really driven much of our increase in per pupil expenditure is some of the out-of-district. But even that 37th is quite a bit higher than we were, but still ranks, towards the bottom 10% in the state on a per pupil expenditure. Next section just looks at where we rank relative to the state and relative to our surrounding towns. So we're over that for the period 2012 to 2018, or FY 12 to 18. That's the period that I have data for both the state and surrounding towns and ourselves. We on average are about 21% lower than what the state is spending on a per pupil basis, and about 11% below what surrounding towns are spending on a per pupil basis. That translates to about $3,100 per student, less than what on the average states are towns around the state are spending per pupil, and about $1,400 less than what surrounding towns are spending. You do the math on that, it's about $4 million in our budget, less than what the state average is on a per pupil expenditure basis, and about 1.5 million less if we were spending at the same level as surrounding towns.
So in 2 or 3 line items total, what's driving that?
What's driving overall us to be lower than the state level?
The fact that the money our budget has available for school spending is that much lower than at least physically, regionally comparable towns, or certainly across the state.
Yeah.
Why is our,
so
is that the...
Well, the biggest factor, I'm not sure I can do it in 2 or 3 sentences. It goes back to pre-2007, 2008 recession. Prior to that point, we were getting very large amount of our school money through Chapter 70. Our Chapter 70 funding represented greater than 50% of our overall funding for the school district. The recession hit, our Chapter 70 dollars stopped growing.
But didn't that occur for everybody?
Not necessarily. So we've been growing basically at a hold harmless perspective. It's probably been occurring for a lot of surrounding towns as well. So more of the burden has been put on the town since that time. So Chapter 70 is growing at about 0.5% year over year over the last 11 years. It's probably lower than that actually now. It might be down to like 0.35, 0.4%. We're getting $35,000 increase in FY 21 for Chapter 70 on an $8 million ticket item. And during that time, a town appropriation has grown 1, 2, 3% overall. Other towns may be increasing them more. Clearly, other towns are increasing them more, especially at the state level. Where
just generally why?
The expenses have increased. There's a far greater burden on our school districts today than there ever has been before.
Why are other communities' draws on the Chapter 70B money increasing greater than ours?
Their Chapter 70 monies aren't necessarily increasing.
Okay.
Their towns are investing more of their of their local receipts into education. Some towns are getting considerable increases in Chapter 70.
Is our percentage of our budget spent on the schools disproportionately lower than other towns in our
no, I would
surrounding
say
communities?
it might even be higher in some cases. Some towns just have larger bases overall, so their police departments are bigger, their fire departments are bigger. Schools,
Fair enough.
for us, just a small
More of a
district like
bedroom
we are.
community concept.
Exactly.
then.
It's,
Okay. Okay.
so
Less commercial tax base.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's, it benefited, because at one point when we were growing in the early 2000s and those Chapter 70 dollars were coming in, it was benefiting us overall.
Right.
Those Chapter 70 dollars dried up, and now it's the other way around.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there any understanding of why the Chapter 70 dollars have dried up?
That's all appropriated at the state legislature. So it's money subject to appropriation. They have a formula that's based on your average real estate values and your per capita income for each town. If you hit a certain threshold on those numbers, you basically get the minimum increase, which has been anywhere from $20 to $50 per student. It fluctuates every year. If you're below threshold on those measurements, the state's providing more. So basically, a lot of your gateway cities have been getting a lot of extra funding based on trying to funnel more to districts that have less ability to pay. The state considers Douglas to be a wealthy town in a lot of ways by their formulas, or at least a middle-income town, let's put it that way. So not 2 or 3 sentences, but it's not an easy short answer. So. The good news is overall the gap is closing. In FY18 in particular, we're now only 12% lower than the state average on per pupil expenditure versus the 21% that we've been running historically, and only about 2% lower than the average surrounding towns on a PPE. That's for including all expenses. If you just look at the in-district expense, we're getting close to those historic averages. So in-district, again, our expenses considerably lower than the surrounding towns in the state level. Required net school spending, not a quick answer here. That's what the state says you have to spend. That's basically your Chapter 70 dollars that the state provides for you, plus a minimum required local contribution, again, based on those formulas, which are based on real estate valuations and per capita income. That's what says you have to spend, at the very minimum, you have to spend that. Across the state, towns are spending about 26.8% above that minimum. Our surrounding town neighbors are spending about 18.3% above that minimum. We, in our latest data, are spending 3.5% above that minimum in 2018. So we're above the minimum. We've been much closer to the minimum. I think we had 1 year when recent 10 years when we spent below it. That's increasing. Our FY19 budget, these are all based on FY18 actuals, which are the latest data available. Increases that even more to about 7% above the minimum. So we've been making progress there. That's kind of the key, I would say, to all this. We've been making progress over the last several years. We're still well below our neighbors in the state in all of these measures, I say is the point. Next, I provide you some data on average teacher salaries. Again, it shows we're kind of below the average surrounding towns, below the state. Again, actually this one, we're actually, the gap is widening in the time period that I measured there. And then lastly, last section is about, really about school choice. And the theme that we've been talking about the last couple of years is about being competitive. Schools are not like other district services. It's easy for someone to say, I don't like what you're doing for the service, I'm going to go someplace else. So we found that when we were underfunding our district back in the 13, 14, 15, 16 time frame, we saw our school choice numbers increasing, our school choice numbers decreasing. The good news is that we've started to see that trend turn around in FY19, but it's fluid because the preliminary data on FY20 is already showing that while our school choice out is continuing to drop, our school choice in dropped a little bit from this year. Okay. There's nothing, that's probably just a bunch of seniors with school choicing in. They graduated, not as many kindergartners came in the other side, choose choicing in, so you see a little fluctuation there. BVT, again, I think it's great that they're available for our town, but they've been a huge drain on our financial resources for the town. We've seen the enrollments there skyrocket in the last half dozen years or so. Going from 71 back in FY13 to, I think the preliminary projection is 120 for FY20. That increases. I didn't have the latest dollars. I had one in there. I didn't feel comfortable without verifying with Gene and Matt, but the expenses of it increased, I would say 130, 140% overall in that time period. I think the number is probably close to 1.3, 1.4 million now that we're paying them. So yeah, you guys know the BBT story at this point. So overall, again, we're trying to be competitive. Everything that we've done by trying to move the district forward is trying to be competitive, trying to keep students here. We think that's good for our students. We think it's good for the district. We think it's good for the town because it limits again, some of the financial burden on the town for students leaving to go other places.
So every year when we get to this point, you guys know I get into this issue of what we're doing at the 8th grade level to be competitive, to try to get those numbers of kids staying in the Douglas public schools versus choosing to go to, let's say, BVT. Is there something someone can just give us a short report on what this school is doing?
Right, so tonight is an example of that. Josh Romano was holding a parents' information night just to talk about what to expect at the high school, what we have to offer at the high school. I know that when I was in the principalship, I did the exact same thing. I also came down early in the school year to meet with them, as Josh Romano has done, is to come down and meet with the 8th grade students to sort of give them a good idea as to all the things that we have to offer at the school. And in doing so, it's not purposely at the detriment of Blackstone Valley Tech. Sure. It's just to compare an apple to an apple. Sure. As to the programs that we presently have. So they also have done a few other things where the 8th grade has come up to the high school. We also, as you know, allow on waivers from the MIAA. Some of the 8th graders are participating in our athletic programs at the high school, filling in on JV programs, so they get the opportunity to be part of that. So those are the types of things that we've tried to do. We certainly try to celebrate the positives that we have. The AP programs and the athletics that we're still offering, and how we've weathered the storm, and we're still very competitive and so forth, and some of the new things that we have on the possible horizon, depending upon budgets going forward. So try to keep them as informed so they can make an educated, decision on what's the best school for them. Again.
I would just add, I think I don't want to say bigger, but a big part of it as well is just the improvements that we're making at the middle school level. If you have a better experience at the middle school, you're more likely to stick around to go to the high school. Sure. I think if we did the budget cuts, and I say this anecdotally from talking to neighbors and whatnot, I think the middle school was hurt the worst when we were making reductions to staff, and I think the culture there was probably hurt the worst. So I think that likely drove a lot of that school choice out, or people moving to BVT that maybe wouldn't have moved to BVT otherwise. So I think by improving the culture there, improving the programs there, improving the class offerings there, that, in my mind, is all designed to keep kids around as well.
And I know I bring it up almost every year, the issue with just the sports fees. Where are we coming into next year for sports fees?
So we've been holding steady.
Yeah.
It's just drew a blank.
175.
175, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, middle school.
Yeah. And we've been in the 225.
200 at high school.
Right, 200 at the high school, which is down from 1.300.
300.
Is there any perception of driving a little more money into that 200 number would change a few bodies?
I'm not sure it would. I think we might be reaching that
We're pretty
threshold.
competitive with the surrounding towns.
But we're
as
better
far
than
as
some other
sports
towns.
fees right now.
But that's not the issue to me. The issue is BVT's fee.
BBT is $50.
Yeah, well, we'll never
And they
be able
can't
to.
compete with that.
No, I
because of
understand we
volume.
can't hit that, but I know that, 3-4 years ago, as some of the sports teams, I think my daughter was on a team that died because they just didn't have the bodies, because some of the bodies were going other places, and the teams never come back. And so you lose, right? The 8th grade kid, pardon?
We've got co-op. though.
Co-op, fair, true, and that's an effort. Believe me, we did hockey, we did a lot of the co-ops. But, once you lose the program, you might then lose 2 more kids to BVT who wanted the program in-house. So I always, I'm a big fan of a driver, of lowering that little bit.
I think
I know you guys do your own analysis.
As we get into the details of finalizing our budget, I think we probably are reaching probably an equilibrium. Again, we're not a huge school district as well.
Yeah, I
so I
understand.
think fees are only going to go so far. Some programs are just going to lose because kids, I'm having the same problem with our baseball league in town. It's just,
We have talked about caps, and we did actually last year implement it because a lot of our kids that are in sports play multiple sports.
Right.
We have families that have 3 kids playing sports, 3 of them playing 3 sports. So, so we are aware of that and try to address that as, if we're able to give a discount on the third kid.
That's for new for this year or without?
New for this year.
Yeah.
For this year, yes. So
Okay.
every year we've done.
I shouldn't say new.
It's a couple of years now.
Reinstituted this year.
Right.
I think it's a couple of years now.
And are we, you said you're bringing the 8th grade kids up to the high school. Are they going up in the fall? You know, I know that kids get the opportunity to go to BVT
Right.
once or even twice relatively early in the 8th grade school year. Mr. Romano has joined us. So,
Right.
I think, Mr. Nigo, were you just asking about 8th graders coming up to the high school?
yeah.
In the fall. But we didn't do anything in the fall. You came to them in the fall. Right?
Yes.
We came to them in the fall, they came to us.
I tried to make me the last voice they hear.
So I know that hypothetically, I may have heard from a young woman in my house, young lady in my house, that you know, who's now in 12th grade, so the information's a little older, obviously. But the concept that, boy, hypothetically, an 8th grader loves a bus ride out away from the school for a day, and is jumping on any bus that'll offer them an opportunity to go anywhere. Bless you. And so that's kind of my question. When you say we go to them, is there benefit to them going to you?
Well, that's why I think that's why we do.
Did I misunderstand that?
We do one in the fall where we come to them and then they come up in the spring. So interview.
Can that be reversed?
Yeah.
Well, it could be. And I actually, we did that a couple of years ago, a number of years back, but I honestly don't know that it would have a
Fair
significant
enough,
impact.
yeah.
When is the BVT trip?
Well, I mean, to piggyback on what Howard's saying, I think if you're able to get them to go to the high school, to see what that's all about, see the programs that are offered there, whether you do, you know, like pair them up with a buddy or something and they go around to the classrooms, or if there's different workshops that they could partake in. I think if you capture that audience early on in the fall, they might be less likely to start sniffing around for other options during the fall and the winter session. If you wait till the springtime, you might have lost some of them already. They may have already made their mind up.
What I'm thinking for next year is that I'll have them come up early in the fall, like during homecoming time.
Yeah,
So they have them
great,
now.
great.
Exactly, yeah, some fun activities going on.
Decorated and
Yeah.
it just creates a buzz when they start asking, like, why are the windows painted? Like, I
Yeah.
hear them asking that. So, but that's, I'll have them come up during homecoming too, when the school's also kind of in a festive thing. So we'll have them come up twice. And then tonight I had parents come tonight too.
That's what Mr. Maines was saying, right?
That's another piece of it is,
Great.
convincing parents that we have great programs.
See, I was going to piggyback on your bus ride trip comment as well, and just give another plug to Mr. Delaney, everything that's going on there as part of the overall culture and environment there. It's part of our STEM push in the middle school.
Yeah.
All kinds of field trips, going on.
Yeah,
where
great,
they're getting out to
great,
see
great.
local businesses and whatnot, which again, I think is just part of that overall push at the middle school level to try to improve the middle school experience along with that.
And I know the other thing I've talked about, I think, with you, Mr. Maines, this concept of the placement information. Is that still going out to the 8th grade kids and their parents?
Yes.
Showing where the Douglas High School kids are going at
Correct.
senior year?
Yep.
Maybe even
I shouldn't say
compared
that,
to
Mr. Romano
BVT?
will probably better answer
Yes.
that.
If you want to come up, Mr. Romano? Yeah, sure. If you don't mind, if
I've been
nobody else.
talking straight for an hour and a half, so I don't mind continuing.
So, yeah.
Yes, so part of the presentation today, there was a slide that shows like the colleges that kids were accepted to last year. And then we're putting together for right now where kids have been accepted so far this year. And it's a pretty great list, and it's a fantastic list to see. So, yeah, we do still share that information with parents, along with, like, I try to keep it all positive, I'm not in trying to sell what's great about Douglas. Like, we do talk about, we offer the MACWIC certification, one of the things that I bring up, which is a manufacturing construction certification. There's only 3 schools in the valley that offer it. There's us, there's Uxbridge, and there's BVT, and we have the highest pass rate on that.
Great.
That's those types of things that we really try to highlight those successes that we have. And then the other big push tonight was the different elective offerings that we've added the last couple of years. So, we're going to have 2 courses now that have a criminal justice slant to them. We're going to have biomedical is coming back for kids who want to get into nursing programs. Zoology and marine biology are being offered next year for kids who want that. We have a lot of kids interested in like veterinary sciences. So it's really about pushing that we have these really cool things that we're doing here that do lead to kids to get into kind of successful places.
Great. all great.
Business,
Appreciate it.
business, so many business
Yeah.
courses.
Can I ask, out of the senior class, what's the statistic on how many kids go on to college as opposed to how many would go into the workforce?
So it's, oh boy, I'd have to do it off the top of my head.
So it's about
Counting
90%
2 and 4, it's
that
close
are
to
going to go
90.
on to college,
Yeah.
whether it be a
Yeah.
2-year or
Okay.
a 4-year college.
So like 100 years ago when I was in high school?
No,
you
I
had-
went to high school.
I'm sure I'm older than you, but in any case, we're not gonna, but way back when I was in high school, there were, the kids who were in the college prep classes, because that was their track. But they had a lot of like the automotive shop, and
Right.
like things that you see at BVT,
Right.
that I don't know if they still have in high school, because obviously.
So we still have a manufacturing program that's there. He does drafting as well.
Okay.
And there's been some other things that we've added as well. And as Josh mentioned, we're exploring the possibility of a construction certification. There's a program out of Millbury and one out of, I forget what the other location is, that we're exploring an opportunity for that, for those kids who do not
Yeah,
want to
but
go on
has
that
the
track and
trend
do not get into
been
Blackstone Valley Tech.
since 100 years ago that it's become like you go to BVT if you want those kinds of things?
So the history was that most schools were a comprehensive high school, and when I started teaching 100 years ago, we had electrical shop, we had wood shop. and
Right.
But when Blackstone Valley came online, it was a redundancy, so you moved away from that. But that was back when the students who got into Blackstone Valley Technical really wanted to go to Blackstone Valley
Right.
Technical,
Right.
and were going to go into a shop that was going to be their career.
Okay.
Which, in all honesty, is just not the case right now.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Right.
It's always been our issue.
Right.
Right.
And again, I am not intending to bash Blackstone Valley Tech, because we're very fortunate that we have a strong vocational school as part of our program here. But you did recently see from the Department of Education that the commissioner did come out and take exception with their acceptance policies, which are not proportionate to what the student populations are in each of our high schools.
It's interesting that you bring that up. We're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks when Blackstone Valley Tech is here. Yes.
Very important point is that it should mirror what our student population mirrors.
Right,
So
right.
our percentage of students receiving special education services should be similar to theirs, that our students who are, and
English language learners and
all of that.
low-income
Right, right,
families.
absolutely.
Low-income families and all of that stuff,
Right.
that's just not part, that's just not the way it was. So, but we're trying to offer those opportunities, and Josh and I have done a lot of planning and a lot of talking about this, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as we get
Yeah,
into this.
because that would keep those kids.
We're trying to.
here, Yeah.
We're trying to. And
interesting point.
there's good reason to stay here, there really is.
We just got a grant to revamp, I guess might be the best way to say it. It's not really expanding it, but to sort of modernize that shop that I have. So next week, my technology teacher and I are going to a workshop at WPI to kind of see what we're going to do to align what we're doing with more of an engineering, but still a hands-on approach to it. For those kids who are hands-on learners who for whatever reason aren't able to get into BVT, but they're still going to do something with their hands and to have that. We're also going to offer a course for career readiness for those kids who are going straight from high school into the workforce to kind of prep them for that, because it can be kind of daunting. You know, what you're going to do the day after graduation can be a little scary if you don't have your college acceptance sweatshirt on or whatever, you know. So we want to make sure that those kids have something that they can do too. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
How many kids can you currently fit in those programs right now?
In the technology program I have?
Yeah.
So basically for safety, they're capped at about 16 kids per class, and he runs 5 classes, so.
Yeah. Just for, it's a small room.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of machinery in it.
Things like computer science, we can do a lot more. Robotics
Correct.
I have 6 robotics kids, it's 18 kids.
Okay.
So, you know, it's a little bit limited just by the resources that we have, but, you know, robotics is only 2 years old in the school, so that's not bad for something that's only been around for 2 years.
Either one, Brett or?
Yeah, so that wrapped up kind of my 50,000-foot view
Yeah.
of things. Kevin, you're going to go next with
Courtney's
this, or
gonna go
Courtney's? Okay, Courtney's going to go next.
Thank you, Mr. Romano.
This is the FY 2021 preliminary budget. And then I have a summary sheet. Kevin and I will be going over as well, if you want to pass these around.
All right.
Not these.
Oh, I'll take that.
Thank you. All right. Wow. Phil, did you get one of those? Right? Sure. Yeah.
Substantial. That is
Courtney would
substantial.
like to go line item by line item.
Here, I'll just, hold on. Let me read this. I'll be right with you guys.
It is a little different than the other budget that you're going to see.
So, Howard, if you wouldn't mind, because you do have some fairly new and some new members that don't know me the way I operate, although I could say it very shortly, I operate a lot like Jean does, that helps. The details.
Yep.
Devil is in the details. So what I'd like to do is go over the budget preparation process. I think that's important for you all to know.
Great.
We are the biggest budget in town, and, it kind of occurred to me that, you might all have an idea, or kind of be thinking in mind, geez, I wonder how we prepare that budget. So I'd like to give you an idea about how we do it. So the kind of, as Jean and I would say, the story behind the numbers with regard to the process. So with regard to the salary budget, as you know, it fluctuates between 84 and 89% of the budget, the largest part of the budget. So certainly Jean can attest to this, because we spend an enormous amount of hours going over, but obviously it is prepared, district-wide and per each school, every single employee, their exact number of days they're going to work, their rate, or if they're on a salary grade, their salary, et cetera. And it's checked and usually 5 times over checked, but that's the largest part of the budget. With regard to the schools preparing their individual school budgets, for instance, supply categories or textbooks. They actually, I've prepared templates and forms for absolutely every single aspect of our budget. And I send that out to each school, and the principal disseminates those forms, and all of the teachers or various staff in their school do prepare it by detail. It's not a situation, and I know there are some other areas, places that do that, but certainly not here in Douglas, where, they just look at last year and they say, oh, I budgeted instructional supplies, $5,000, I'll just add another $1,000, it's $6,000. We don't do that here. We have detailed sheets. In fact, I have a whole W.B. Mason box full of all of the stuff each fiscal year. So they do prepare exactly what they figure they do need for the following year. They're asked to actually itemize it all. The principal reviews it. Mr. Maines reviews every single budget item, as well as myself, with each of the administrators. With regard to facilities, the facilities manager prepares, I prepared a template for that, a detailed listing district-wide for each individual school for every single preventative maintenance need, supplies, the amount, potential repairs, all in detail. Technology, same thing for the technology director. And I've prepared various templates for each one of the individual people for their particular budgets, because they're all different. The athletic programs, this one I have to admit I stole. I went online nationwide and found this beautiful template that we use, and particularly for the high school, it's a much larger athletic program. It's actually each season, and then done by sport, every single expenditure category for each season, by each sport, and the number of participants in every single expenditure category, and the dollars come across. So you can look at it every single which way you want, plus program cost, plus the total, the estimated participants times the fee, to look at the revenue and all of that, all in detail. I also keep a separate spreadsheet on the actual number of participants, and we compare that based on, a little bit to Howard's point earlier, the actual participants, and look at each sport and the actuals compared to what we estimated, to see if there is anything going on with regard to each sport and category, and review that as well. Electricity, I do a detailed sheet listing for each school, the actual kilowatt hours for every single school. I've got data for actually over 15 years, but the current sheet I have is 10 years. So I actually calculate that out for actuals to look at not only the trend analysis, because we have done some things to lower our electricity use, but also the town does a contract for it. I use the actual rate, kilowatt hours. I also look at details for an entire year for the distribution rate, and I also have information with regard to the Z schedule, which I know Jean is a favorite subject, with regard to the credit, so that I'm not over budgeting. So my point with all these details is I understand very clearly that if I over budget for something, in a line, I'm taking money away from what could possibly pay for a teacher. I'm very extremely cognizant of that. So to me, the devil is in the details, but it's a good devil. Special education, I prepared for Neely a whole workbook. She needs a whole workbook, a whole template specifically for her, one for special education tuitions, and she prepares it for each and every student based on the OSD rate, just so that you know, for all the special education out of district schools, OSD at the state level sets the rates. And we do add a little bit, maybe 2 or 3% that we're expecting to have with regard to that. That's the other district tuitions, also the transportation. And there's also contracted services, tutoring, and things of that nature. Fuel, luckily, we do the bid process, so we actually have the whole process is done, so we know exactly the rate. For instance, for FY21 is 2.1547, $2.1547 per gallon. I guess I was saying that right. For this current year, it's 2.0675. So we have that exact calculation. We look at a trend analysis too on use of fuel and possible carryover and things of that nature. So I just wanted to give you just kind of a quick thing on, that there's a lot of work and detail that goes into it. And then after I prepare the budget, there's a lot of meetings and discussions, and I can tell you, if anybody knows Mr. Maines, he's looking at everything as well, and meeting with everybody. So with regard to the budget itself, which I provided you, this is this big document here, okay? So what I have here is the first column is the FY19 actuals, that's expenditures plus encumbrances for FY19, the FY20 approved budget, and the FY21 superintendent's preliminary proposed budget, that's the third column. The fourth column is the offsets, and that's, I take a careful look at with regard to revolving funds and grants, and sometimes we also have donations we can utilize. The largest revolving funds, of course, are circuit breaker and school choice, and also preschool as well. And grants have been dwindling. I have to say, we have had quite a reduction in grants, particularly over the last 3 to 4 years. So that's the offset column. So we are utilizing to the extent that possible. It's preliminary, but that's that fourth column. And the fifth column, of course, is what I would call the net general fund. If you go to the last page, at the very bottom of page 25 of 25, I'm providing to you the details with regard to what's incorporated in that fourth column for offsets. All of the budgeted use of revolving funds, school choice tuition, circuit breaker, preschool, both athletic programs, and a small amount from the district-wide music program. The 3 grants that we have incorporated in the budget here are the special ed, we call it it's the 94-142, we call it the 240 grant. That's utilized for tuitions, and Title I and SPED early childhood grant as well. So that's just kind of a broad overview of how this budget works. This particular budget, I want to remind everyone, is preliminary. We haven't received the appropriation yet from the town, so certainly we understand that this is preliminary. I think we all feel that it's in everyone's interest that we prepare a budget of what we truly feel our needs are, because if we do not do that, then you don't really know what we feel as a school department, as a school committee, the superintendent of schools, all of the administrators, what we feel we need to properly educate students, in the town of Douglas.
So I call this our moving the district forward, the budget rate. This is the full thing, this is the full ask for everything, kind of executing on the plan that Kevin and the administration have worked on over the last couple of years.
So I know that, in some places the thought may be that, just prepare the budget only a certain way, but yet then you have no idea what's being left off the table, what isn't articulated, what isn't delineated, what isn't brought forward, so that to me, it's in everyone's interest to have full transparency and full disclosure. Otherwise, the decision-making process itself, I feel, is somewhat thwarted, for lack of a better word, because you don't have the full information to make a fully informed decision. So that's just my own thoughts. I don't know about anyone else, but that's why
I think we all realize
feel it's
a big
important
ask.
to do that.
I don't think anyone would say that here that we expect to be fully funded at what that ask is. We
Right.
know the town's financial situation, none of us are new to this, so.
Right.
But to Courtney's point, just to make sure you guys are kind of operating off of, kind of full needs and.
So if this is an ask and this is like what we'd really like, is there also a budget of what we really need?
Well, I'll explain,
Okay.
as we go. I'm just kind of
Okay.
giving you an overview
Okay.
to start with. So, and I wanted to give that overview before I said, so this budget represents an increase of 8.12% over the FY 2020 appropriation, or $1,103,069. And again, reminding you that the net amount, the last column, incorporates the use of $2,570,463 in revolving funds and grants, which is a slight decrease from last year's budgeted amount.
How much do you have of those revolving funds? Like, how much are you using of that? Kind of under the concept of, once you drain that well dry, you can't go back for another sip, so.
Yeah, and I was going to get into it, in other words,
All right, okay.
because I thought you'd say, well, how come there's a decrease? So I was prepared to actually address that issue as well. And in the process, I can go over the process with you as well. The
So can we just table
overall,
that for?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're coming up to that next, if I jumped ahead, let's table that.
no problem
Yep.
at all. No problem, be happy to answer any questions that you have. The overall transportation budget represents a decrease, believe it or not, of 3.26%, or $50,848, due to the special education decrease, basically the number of students decreased from last year. I do want to note that in this budget as well, that in some instances, when you're comparing FY 19, 20, and 21 columns, the DESE made a number of changes, unfortunately, very unfortunately, to their chart of accounts. So I've been forced to move things around, so I just want to kind of put that out there as well. And I should have some notes on here that delineates that in that final column.
So do you want to walk through this document in any level of detail? Do you want to just do a total by school touch on? Do you want a particular, it's a lot of detail, and I can imagine you want to go line by line on it. Or do you?
No, I think that without trying to, I guess I have a quick comment.
Okay.
I'll leave it that there's a line item on the first page near the top that I wish weren't there.
The very first line or another line?
No, no, I think,
Yeah.
Can I borrow for a second? If I can guess what Mr. Howard's
about
getting
me?
at?
I might be.
Yeah.
And so I understand that that was in the making eventually. And it sounds like this suggests that that is our future.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. All right, and we'll move on.
It's not, there's
I got it.
no document as
Right.
of
But
this
but
moment.
that appears to be the future?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right.
Oh.
And obviously, thank you
Yeah.
officially for all the work through now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in terms of item by item, not necessarily, I guess, the focus back to, it looks like the information is in page 25, right?
Well,
In
there were a
terms of
few
the-
other things
right?
that I was going to go over as far as large, as far as big.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think I could just let me
Okay.
finish my thing here. So I did want to let you know that currently we are in negotiations with the DTA cafeteria and custodial contract. So I just want to let you know, when you look at the top line, okay, and you see a dollar amount in there, that incorporates a modest COLA. It also, for all employees and employee groups, and it also incorporates degree changes, because we also have a detailed spreadsheet on that. We send out a letter, anybody that's anticipating a degree change. And I do want to let you know that it incorporated throughout the entire budget and all salary lines for those that have steps. Those are incorporated in the individual lines. Okay, so the $260,719 is only an amount representing a modest COLA, and then amounts for degree changes.
So the steps are something we can predict with certainty. So those are incorporated in the budget where they would belong. The COLA is an estimate at this point, so we have it top line.
We saw you recently, frankly, in executive session.
Correct.
To discuss some items.
Yeah.
Are you able to address the result of those events?
No, we're still in
Okay, thank you.
negotiations.
Okay.
So, we've
Okay.
got an assumption on coal that's kind of based on the current contract, and that's what we'll operate with for now.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a timeline?
Active, I think
No.
things are going well.
Fair
It's been
enough.
productive.
It's hard to,
It's been
Fair enough.
productive.
That's all, that's all we can
Productive.
ask.
We had a
Fair
meeting,
enough.
another session
to
this
say we can
afternoon.
do
so-
that,
Okay,
just too hard to tell.
okay.
So,
So that also is a fluid set of numbers throughout this document.
I think you're talking about the salary grid.
Absolutely.
And,
Sure.
as you know, Matt is doing some things, and they're working very collaboratively to try to address that. I think we're getting close.
Great,
Fingers crossed.
okay.
So, so what I was going to, after I went through this part here, I was going to go over this other document, and that will actually give you a good, if it's okay with you, without going through, because I really don't think anyone, unless I said, there are costs available, I don't think we want to go through every line. But I did prepare that other sheet as a summary sheet, so we can go over some things to highlight some things.
Great.
So, go over that next,
question
if
as
you
well
like.
as far as
Right.
different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, before I go over this here, does anybody have any questions? Anything that I've said thus far? Yes, you did. Okay, with regard to the revolving funds and the, circuit breaker and
School choice.
school choice, because those are the largest ones,
Yep.
so I'm glad I thought of that. So what I do is, I have another, on those, I have a trend analysis sheet again, with all of the actuals for every single year. The carryover balance, the revenues brought in, what was actually budgeted in a particular budget that the school committee approves, and then on a separate line, say for instance on school choice, any additional appropriations. So I'm kind of tracking it, separating it from what was budgeted, and then what we added on after, because that's good to see, instead of just adding it all in one lump sum. You want to see, okay, what things came up during the year that you ended up having to use this in addition to what you had budgeted. Or maybe it was even came lower. And then, so you'll have all your actuals. I've got 10 years of data on that. So I actually have to do for FY21, for instance, for circuit breaker and for school choice, obviously a projection. And I'm prudently conservative, obviously.
Right.
We've heard that from Jean a few times, with regard to my revenue estimates. Now, with regard to your particular point, I'm going to talk about circuit breaker, because I think it's probably more telling with regard to circuit breaker, and I can give you an exact example. The way that circuit breaker works, the revenue that we receive in FY20 is based on FY19 eligible expenditures. Okay? So in students, and it's usually students that have out-of-district placements. So for instance, for FY21, the reason why I have it slightly lower preliminarily, because it is still early, is because we had 2 students go off that we won't have expenditures for in FY21. We will get some revenue in FY21, but because I'm thinking prospectively and because they were coming off, that I'm not going to utilize to the extent I normally would, because I want to leverage across several years that revenue and that fund balance so that I don't overuse it in FY21 and they say, oh my God, you can't have big spikes.
Okay.
Okay, so I am very cognizant of that, and I work very closely with Mrs. Urquhart. She provides me with a preliminary on each individual student for circuit breaker, what the actual expenditures are expected to be for right through June 30th of FY20, because 21 is based on that. And we have to take off a foundation amount for each student, and then I actually have to say I did increase my being prudent on my percentage. So I've been using 65% in the past years, but they have been funding at the amount they're supposed to be doing is 75 every year, 75%. So I did increase it to 70% as far as my projection on the percent that, because it's the percent of the eligible amount that we get for revenue for the next year. So again, another detailed spreadsheet. I incorporate that on my trend analysis sheet. I look at them and then I go over it with the budget subcommittee, school committee, Mr. Maines, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And they would let me know if they thought, hey, this doesn't look right or have any questions or anything. And we incorporate that in the budget. Now again, this is very preliminary. For instance, the circuit breaker file hasn't been uploaded, but when it is, it may change a little bit. I may be able to increase it a little bit, but when I put out the very preliminary budget, I want to be very prudently conservative. As time goes on, we may be able to increase, by the time the school committee actually has their public hearing and votes the final budget, I may be able to increase the utilization of those revenues to offset and be able to maintain some of our services or add on some of the staff that we would like to add on that's incorporated in this budget when we receive the appropriation from the town. So it's between, in the end, after this is done, it's the appropriation we get from the town, and then a re-look at those other revenues we have available without putting ourselves in a predicament for subsequent years that we'll look at very carefully again before we get to that budget.
So I don't think Courtney has the details with her, and I never asked her to estimate, because I know she might do that.
Yeah.
But I don't have the same feeling. So I'll give you an example, let's say on school choice. So last year, I think we ended up getting about 900,000 in revenues on school choice in. And we probably, I can't remember what our reserve, Carol, but we would typically look at, what do we expect for revenues? I think next year our estimate is around 800,000. So for this year, we would probably look to spend about 800,000. Actually, we probably have a little bit more of a balance right now. So we're probably going to spend a little more than 800,000 this year, knowing that we have about 800,000 coming in to refresh that. So we always look ahead to see what's going to be refreshed and spend about that same amount. Again, just using broad numbers, we try to kind of carry over that same amount. So if things were completely stable, we would spend 800,000 this year, get another 800,000 in, and have 800,000 in reserves, and kind of keep that cycle flowing.
Okay.
The numbers do fluctuate a little bit, so those numbers will end up being a little bit different overall, but.
And to Courtney's point, you always want to keep a little in the bank for unforeseen circumstances that pop up.
Unforeseen,
Yeah.
So you can't dip too far in the last couple of years. We've taken some chances.
That's my concern is,
But we did it with, we said it all the time in our meetings, it was with a 2 to 3 year plan, so we really had some very long discussions. For instance, part of the school choice figure is that to date, we've been allowed to, basically, in other words, if we have anything left in the general fund, we reclass, and it goes into, it provides more revenue, carryover balance, I should say, in school choice. And prior years, I never even looked at it and would refuse to even give anybody an estimate. But because of the situation, because of the push to move the district forward, and we certainly wanted to do so as well, I think we all saw collectively what it was doing with BVT, school choice out and everything. So I think we all collectively were of the mind of we need to do everything we can to do that, but it takes money. So I did, and what is the phrase I use? I put myself out on a limb, which I never do. But, still being cautious. I could sleep at night. I told Brett, I knew I was still sleeping at night.
It was thick enough.
It was, you're right. So we did, but we did look, we didn't just say, okay, we're only going to look at FY20 and make these, we were looking a couple of years ahead as well. And with regard to my trend analysis sheets, particularly for circuit breaker, because of the possibility of students moving in at any time, I even have a contingency line. In other words, I have a fund balance with all the detail that I showed you. But just to have it written there, to keep us cognizant and remind us that we need to be thinking of it, I actually have a contingency line. And I put say 360,000 so that we see it actually there in black and white. So we only look at that one line. You never know. You never know, so.
Need those emergency funds for sure.
Now, does that answer your question as far as you had, as far as?
It does. One follow-up to that, you've got your trend analysis worksheets. Could we see those at some point? Would you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'd be happy to show you, I've got lots of them.
All right.
Do you want the circuit breaker and?
Yeah, basically the school choice and the circuit breaker are the two large ones I think would be the most telling, the most interesting.
Howard give them to the rest of you, is that okay?
Yeah, be happy to.
That works.
Be happy to.
Excellent, I appreciate it.
So we just provided, this was just a kind of a one-sheet summary. So you sort of have to look at it from the bottom up. So at the very bottom, all this is just giving information that if we were to receive 1.5% increase, or 2 or 2.5 or 3, just what the dollar values, that's all that is. Up from there, in the interest of full disclosure, since the budget was approved by the school committee last April, we did add these additional positions. Okay, they're also incorporated, of course, in the FY21 budget. So we do tell you what they are, the dollar amounts, and then I'm also reflecting the offset from preschool revolving fund, bringing the net effect to the general fund going forward of 176,378. I believe that Mr. Maines will be talking more about,
Yep.
all of that as far
Does
as.
that make sense? So since, at the time we presented our budget to you last year and we received our appropriation, we were at the 13,589 was our appropriation. Because we ended up having more school choice dollars to work with, we were able to add some positions at the beginning of this school year. And that's what.
To address needs.
So that's kind of that goes into our new level service,
Yeah.
so to speak.
5 of them are actually required, we're pretty much mandated, but, yeah.
But the way this outlines, it doesn't look like it's level service. Am I misunderstanding? I'm looking at the bottom FY 2020 appropriation, 13,589,970, and then it's got the 152, 25, and 3% numbers. But in the middle block, that 221,803 goes up, net 176,378 goes up top and is up and over the 13,589,970.
Right, so that's our current service
level
level,
service.
I guess.
Right.
So when we go into FY '21, that is now part of what is our level of service right now. Ours, so.
To be honest with you,
It becomes a new level.
But the appropriation percentages, you would need to hit the 1.50 to get to 03,850. You'd be over by $29,000, $27,000. But you need the 1.5 just to level service.
Yes, well, well, actually we need more than that.
Well, you do, because you've got the 430 line item.
Yeah.
The all staff with the COLAs and everything, right?
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct. But just wanted to say that when we talk about level service, it's actually a different level of service than we were at last year. We've
Right,
added
sure,
positions to that, and so.
And to be honest with you, that's every year in the interest of full
Yeah,
disclosure,
sure,
because
yeah.
there are mandates. We are required to, and there isn't a year that goes by that we don't have that. And so, to Brett's point, like you said, it is the current level service, because it does change.
So for
Because we're a
instance,
school
we had-
department, we don't have, we can't just, there are things that we're required or mandated that we have
There's
to
3
provide.
positions in it just for kindergarten, because we had an influx of kindergartners last year, so we couldn't just keep the same number of 4 kindergarten teachers and throw 30 kindergartners in a class. We were there a couple of years ago, and it was a disaster. So we hired another kindergarten teacher, another para, and another ABA to go with that.
What's an ABA?
ABA.
Applied behavior.
Oh, thank you.
Unless they help in the classrooms.
Thank you.
So in the middle there, I think we've already kind of, so you have the FY20 appropriation, and then I'm just delineating the largest increases as far as what all of this detail here, this detail budget, just kind of breaking them up into the largest categories, coming up to the current level service budget, and then these are some additions that we did add into this budget as well. And Mr. Maines was going to go over a lot of that information.
Well, Courtney, before we get there, am I correct that to level fund, including the anticipated salary increases, you need almost 6% over last year, almost $800,000?
Well, as you can see, it's 430,780 is just all the staff.
Yeah, I'm okay, I understand.
Yeah.
But am I understanding it correctly?
You are.
You are.
Again, I know it's-
14,399.
again.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay,
Yes.
all right.
It's a big guys, and I think that's where, we have to go back and, look at some things, but this is
Okay.
the first pass of the budget, and,
It's reality.
yeah.
Okay.
It is reality.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Stay competitive and to provide the services that were mandated as well as the services that the kids are demanding.
What they currently have this year, just to stay on par for next year.
What is our student-teacher ratio, maybe in the K level and K1, or 1?
I'd say for primary school, you guys would run about 22 per class, I would say. So that's for K1 and 2. K1, sorry, K1 elementary school, you guys are finding
We're 23,
24?
24 per class.
Okay.
In middle school, I'm gonna guess is in the 20s.
Oh, they're in the 20s, yeah.
Yes.
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
And it varies because of all the
Yeah,
courses.
sure, yeah, okay, okay.
Which are all levels that we're happy with, and those are good.
And are
stable
competitive
levels for us.
across the valley?
Yes, and I think, as Brett mentioned, a few years ago, we were looking at much bigger.
Oh, I remember
numbers.
those
they were big.
numbers, sure.
And that, quite frankly, has a large impact on school choice.
Right, sure,
Especially
absolutely.
the younger
Sure.
kids,
Yeah.
because parents do not want their kids in a kindergarten
Yep.
class of 28 kids.
Yeah, or 33, yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
okay.
think you also risk losing some of your teachers at that rate too,
Oh,
because,
that's true.
you know, to have 28, 30 some odd first grade, second graders in a classroom, I could imagine some teachers pulling their hair out.
That's a zoo.
It's like trying to herd kittens, you know?
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Sure, thank you.
As Courtney has mentioned at the very top of that page, some of the additions, we mentioned these in our meeting previously. But a couple of things, if I can, having now been around for a little bit of time in the district and having seen quite a number of ups and downs, and maybe it's because of my age and I've become reflective. We went through some very lean times a number of years ago. And I think we would all, and a number of you were on the board at the time, would say that we were at a significant tipping point. And what ended up happening was that the school committee made some very, very difficult decisions to dig deeper and run the risk of really drawing down some of those revolving accounts. For the very simple reason, and for the only reason, to maintain some stability in our district, to reinstill some confidence in what we were doing within our district, and to stop the flow out of our district. And the only way that could have happened was to dig a little deeper. Now, that definitely held us in place, and it has proven to be a very, very good decision that was made. There's no question about that. We've used that same mindset going forward as well, and the override certainly has helped our situation because it kept us from having to dig even deeper into school choice, into circuit breaker, into all the things. We have also, I think, my point is that we should be celebrating at this point where we presently are, given the cliff, and I've been in this room with the question, with the Sophie's Choice questions were coming up. Do you want to cut your athletic programs, or do you want to cut 5 more teachers? We have stabilized, but I would tell you this, that we've also grown, and we've done so in a very pragmatic manner. We have expanded what we can offer our students across all grade levels. And what I just passed out to you is sort of another piece of when I first came on board 3 years ago. As Brett has mentioned, the plan for moving forward was bring some stability, and now let's bring some competitiveness. I think back to when we brought in the AP courses and how that was a significant benefit to our district, because we became seen in the same light as a Sutton, as a Nipmuc, and so forth, because we were offering those courses to our students. And if you recall, and I know, Howard, you were there because we had conversations about this, we did everything in our power to not lose those advanced placement classes, because, as you know, the advanced placement classes tend to be smaller in enrollment for the obvious reasons, which means that your core classes tend to increase because you have less teaching assignments. You only have so many teaching assignments. If you're going to dedicate a teaching assignment to an advanced placement chemistry that might have 10 kids originally in it, and attrition ends up at 8 kids, you're asking your teacher for one of the teaching assignments to teach 8 students. We didn't walk away from that. And I think that the commitment to that was because we know that students benefited tremendously from that. Numbers of students who got a full year of school on the house because they had the AP credits. That was, again, a calculated risk. And so if you've ever had an opportunity to come in my office I have a whiteboard, and it is full, and it's a collaboration between all of these people that are behind me, as well as the committee, as well as Ms. Keegan, of, okay, how do we keep moving forward in a logical and pragmatic way? So, for example, you saw that the pre-K program has expanded, which is a good thing, and possibly could expand again. So it went from up to a .5 position for a half-time teacher. We think that that might possibly be a full-time teacher for next year, which is a real plus for those students who are getting the early education opportunities in our school. And pre-K is a learning experience for those students, which means that when they get to kindergarten, they're better served. The kindergarten positions that we had to hire last year reflects what I think is a real positive. Enrollments are going up again. We've been on a downslide, and our numbers are a little bit higher now in the kindergarten. You're going to see that going forward. And so we needed to address that kindergarten position because we made the commitment that we weren't going to go to that number that we had been at in previous years. It's just not tenable. So in doing so at the preschool, they've also added things beyond the basics of the education that they would receive. Coding and robotics and some new math programs. So not only have we absorbed the cost of additional teaching staff, but we've also brought more opportunities for learning to our students. And next year, the aspiration is, as you see in the packet that I gave you, we're looking for a 1.0, a full-time STEM teacher who's going to go from pre-K all the way through grade 5. So they already do some STEM learning. Now you're giving another opportunity for a teacher to come in and continue to provide science, technology, engineering, and math learning experiences all the way from pre-K to grade 5. But there's a cost involved in that. But again, we're not looking for one for each grade level. We're looking for one person to provide additional learning experiences at a cost of $55,000. And we also know that we need to go out and find funding, and I know that John Bell has secured some funding to support the STEM program of, I think it's $10,000? About $10,000. So that will help us with the materials and supplies, and you'll see that later on I did mention materials and supplies. So there's the primary school. The elementary school changed a delivery model along with the leadership of Mrs. Urquhart. Our special education program changed, and what we did is we absorbed a reduction in our paraprofessionals and ABA staff and hired a teacher. Now, each grade level has a grade-specific special education teacher working with each of those grade levels, and they're now collaborating and sharing the educational experience within the classroom. So we're now able to get the special education teachers into the classroom, and it's paying what I believe, and Neil, you can tell me if I'm wrong, huge dividends for our students. Again, no additional ask for money. It was absorbing, reallocating, if you will. At the elementary school, we added a full-time dedicated adjustment counselor, which we did not have. We were sharing an adjustment counselor for 380 students in the elementary and 200 and somewhat students. One person is going to be the adjustment counselor for all 580 of those students. By expanding it, we now have a dedicated individual at the primary school and a dedicated individual at the elementary school, and that they're providing classroom instruction, they're running small groups. These are things that we could not have done before, all of them, which I believe are paying real benefits. The aspiration for the elementary school is, if we have the funding, is that STEM position that I told you about would cover grades 2 through 5. And if we're able to, we are introducing a new math program, math, which is a new program for pre-K through grade 5, and they're already using it as a trial in the primary school, and the kids can't get enough of math. Now, as a student in my day, I had plenty of math, just these kids are just going above and beyond. The reason for that is, and the reason why I mention it is, if you recall, one of the things, the commitment we tried to make is that we wanted to see improvement in our math scores universally in our MCAS testing. And so we added a Title I teacher 3 years ago who's providing support, and now this program, we believe, will also be an additional support. Short money, and it does come with professional development, which is important. And as I mentioned, they have secured some funding through the Project Lead the Way grants. The middle school, to Brett's point, the reason why you see increases in the funding for the cost for educators is we made the commitment that we took three educators who were part-time, and we made them full-time. So basically added 1.5 positions. What do we get for that? We added to our art program digital design, to our music program dedicated time to band and chorus, which was a huge issue, as you recall. And then we added health class to PE. So previously, there was no health instruction at the middle school. And to that point, the health teachers at the high school and the middle school just recently finished collaborating and have now developed a sequential grades 6 through 10 health curriculum that will eliminate redundancies and will ensure that we're covering state standards in health for all of our students grades 6 through 10. By simply adding that person who was already in the building for halftime to full-time, that was the get for doing that. And again, we're adding staffing a little bit, but the benefits have been phenomenal. This year, we made the commitment and we added a STEM teacher at the middle school. And that STEM teacher has been a tremendous find. But the work that she's doing, and Brett's been in there, and I think Kelly's been in there to see them with the catapults and all the bridge building and all the things that they're doing, has been tremendous. But now every student in 6, 7, and 8 is getting STEM on a rotational basis throughout the course of the year. To that point, Brian Delaney went out and secured a 3-year, $100,000 total grant fund to support that STEM program. So now not only do we hire the staff, but we now have additional funding that is supporting that instruction, not just in that STEM class, but in all the science and math classes in that building, which, again, tremendous gain. One of the things that Brian wanted me to mention was that they undertook a new program called NWEA, which is Northwest Education Assessments, and an IXL program. And we now have significant data that we're using to generate assessment of performance, student performance, to be used for instructional purposes. What are we not hitting on? What are we hitting on? What are we not hitting on? Better address the needs there. And you've seen a 50% growth in student performance, English and math and science, as a result of this program, and a more focused and more dedicated attention to really looking at data and having the data drive student learning. So the middle school with that program has been a real godsend. The athletic program has been really strong at the middle school. The band program has come back at the middle school, and the choral program has come back. And we also should mention that we went out and we were able to secure through Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna a grant for $40,000+ so that we now have a one-to-one Chromebook program at the middle school as well through the grant funding. The high school has done a number of things. We talked about this a couple of years ago, the Blackstone Valley Education Consortium. We are now sort of we've begun the process. We secured $25,000 from the state to begin this process, and 13 school districts are now funneling students into this experience where you can't always offer a course that might meet the interest of a couple of students. And everybody has that in the district, in their district. And so now we're expanding that. This year was manufacturing, next year it'll be a manufacturing, and there'll be a computer science program, and there is one other program that our students can participate in. It's outside of the scope of their regular school day. It's a regionalization, and it's an efficiency where we're providing opportunities for our kids to take these courses outside of the scope of their regular, they take their regular school day, and they're doing additional, just because we want to try to provide that opportunity.
Do they get credit for that?
Yep.
How do they get there?
That parents make the commitment to get them there.
Fair enough, okay.
Yeah. One of the things that's in there is transportation, that we do have some transportation needs that if we continue to grow this program. Now, I should tell you that we've asked for $100,000 for seed money for this program for next year, to really grow this from the state. From the state.
Yeah.
Good point.
From the state,
Key point.
which is where we got the 25 to start it with.
Right.
So this is a model program. We're the only ones in the state that are doing it, and we look to expand it. It's going to be a great opportunity to offer kids new opportunities to learn and to take courses that they might not be able to take.
Are we currently home to any of those courses?
As of right now, no. As of right now, no. So one of the things that we had talked about just this morning is that if we are able to get this science position, which would provide some animal science and horticulture, plant science, we've already talked about that in 2021 and 22, that we would offer that course in the education collaborative.
Okay.
So that person would, and there's a benefit to the teachers because they get paid outside of, by the Blackstone Valley Group. They pay their salary of $10,000 to teach a course. So, again, we offer early college program. Josh also secured a grant recently for
$40,000.
Project Lead the Way, just a $40,000 grant as well that he just secured. So, I mean, we're not, please know that, and the reason why I'm saying this is we're going out trying to find every penny we can to offset the cost that you're seeing there. Josh mentioned a few of the things that we're looking to do. We do an early college program. We're doing it with Quincy. We're looking to do it with Worcester State. We're looking to try to look and see if we can do it with Nichols in 2021-22. So our students are earning college credit by enrolling in there's a cost to the parents, but they literally, if they jump on board early, can get a full year of their college credits taken care of by participating in this early college program. The engineering program is going to be a win. It's already, the manufacturing is already a win. We talked about the certification program. Josh quickly mentioned robotics. We've offered now robotics. Robotics 1, we look to add robotics 2, and that robotics has now become competitive robotics. So the high school kids are competing against other high school kids in robotics. We are now looking to revamp a little bit our computer science program. We are now offering, as Josh mentioned, the pre-med idea of biomedical linked in with our AP courses. Business courses. We now have a DECA program that's going to, that just began competing this year, and we had 4 students already qualified for the state competition, and they're going there this week in a program that we looked to put into place 8 years ago, the DECA program. It finally has come to fruition, and right away, you're seeing tremendous rewards from that. And what's the cost to it? A stipend for an advisor. We're fully involved in some other clubs that we're offering to our kids, art club, gaming club. We now have an esports program. I'm not even sure what esports is, but we have an esports program that developed sort of organically because one of our teachers wanted to offer kids some after-school activity, and it blossomed into this whole program. It wasn't intended to happen. It just happened. So you've got those improvements that we're seeing. And then the special education, which we mentioned, was the collaboration, the team teaching, which is proving huge dividends. and Neely and others have been really championing unified sports and providing our students the opportunity to compete against others, and they have competed against Uxbridge, Hopedale, they've done bowling, they've done volleyball, they have done basketball, and it's competitive, and it's also linked to our Best Buddies programs. So that's another huge win for our programs. And we also should mention that we had to add an EL, an English language learner teacher, because of our increased enrollment and because of also the different levels at which students are with regards to their language fluency and proficiency. And we've had a couple of students who've come in who are really at the very base level, and in order to really meet that need, that the teacher that we presently had just couldn't do that, so we had to hire another teacher. But we have 2 EL teachers for 4 buildings, and we're sharing them there. So I said I wanted to celebrate. I know I took your time, but I think that the fact of the matter is that at one point, we were over the cliff, and I think it's really important that the community realizes that not only did we sustain, we've grown and we've developed and we've increased our competitiveness. So the ask that I had, and I didn't mention this at the last time we were here, is a science teacher at the high school, which would be for biomedical and horticulture and animal science. With that, we talked about the community garden idea and linking that to our extended school year, providing, the end result would be providing foodstuffs to people in the community with need. I should have mentioned that Mr. Bell is starting a community garden at the elementary school on the request of 2 students who came in and advocated and presented to me, and we're now going to add a community garden at the elementary school, which would also serve that purpose. We are looking for a STEM teacher. The STEM teacher, as I indicated, would now take us from pre-K to 5, which means that we now have 6, 7, and 8, and we have it at the high school. If we can get this position, STEM now becomes, we go from a district that had no STEM teachers to offering STEM opportunities for all of our students from pre-K all the way through high school. One more position. The one special education teacher at the middle school, that we have 2 educators, special education teachers for inclusion, but we have 3 grade levels. This would give us 1 for each grade level. They could begin the team teaching process at the middle school as well. And there's a few other things that are in there with regards to the clubs that I mentioned, the Unified Sports Program that we talked about, the Blackstone Valley Superintendent's Consortium that we talked about, and the engineering and some of the needs. So there are some sundries there that we talked about. But those are the asks that we have. And one other position that we do have, that we did include, and I forgot to add it in here, is we are looking to add a 1.0 custodian. Facilities, grounds, because they were decimated as well. And right now, we have 1.5 custodians at night cleaning the elementary school. It's a huge building, really not sustainable, and we really have one person taking care of the outside grounds, and we really could use some help on the outside grounds because there's a lot of additional responsibilities there. So I wanted to first celebrate because I didn't want to just come in and ask for, I wanted you to realize that the charge that we received 3 years ago was to be competitive. We have maintained our competitiveness, we've improved on our opportunities and our experiences for our students, and we would like to continue to do so. In full disclosure, when I came in 3 years ago, these requests that I put in here today were the last pieces. As you know, we did this in a pragmatic way. We only added a little bit along the way, getting huge returns on our investment, and this is sort of the last piece of it. But it does address areas that really we need to focus on. And so with that, I'm done.
A lot there.
Anyone?
That's a good thing.
Well, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Could have been worse, could have been nothing.
No, that's a great presentation. And everything the 3 of you have said about the progress we've made over the last 3 or 4 years has been frankly extraordinary. It's been fantastic, and a lot of hard work, and we appreciate it.
Right.
If I could just take a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Kelly, if you want to come up? Yep.
My oldest, I have to think back, losing track, but he was looking at a senior year
Yes.
of no athletics. And we had to make the decision, was he going to stay or go, because he was an athlete, and he has continued to do athletics in college. That was when we were going over the cliff, and I sat in the audience of the school committee meetings at that point, frequently by myself. And I never would have believed we got where we are now. I honestly did. I had every faith in the world that they were going to do their best. I didn't think we would get here. And it's very gratifying for me as a parent in town I'm now on my third kid who's halfway through high school, 2 in college. I can't say enough about what Douglas Academics does to prepare these kids. I'm just thrilled with what they were offered, and that was back when we didn't have quite so much to offer.
Right.
I'm looking right now at approving my youngest's schedule for next year, and I'm just amazed at the variety. It's not cheap, it's expensive. We are the biggest ask in town. There's no way around it. And just looking at the little one sheet, looking at that 8%, that's huge. We're all aware that's huge. There's no question. But I just want to say with what the town has given the school and what the school has managed to do, I'm convinced there's some magic in there somewhere, because it doesn't make any sense any other way. But the dividends, as Kevin said, are just enormous. We've really turned around in a short amount of time. There were people leaving the schools in droves.
In staff.
And staff, yeah.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of very good young teachers who left.
And programs were lost.
just-
Sure, and opportunities for the kids, yeah.
So as a school committee, we appreciate every dollar that's given to us to work with this budget. I want to make that clear, but I'm very impressed with what has been done in the last few years.
And I did say to you that I was going to come back and tell you exactly what we were looking for and exactly why we were looking for it, and with the full realization that it was going to be a big number. But that being said, to Kelly's point, we have made great progress. It would be a shame to sort of slow down now when we're almost, I mean, to my vision, and I shouldn't say my vision, our vision is right there.
So I'm going to ask you, because you're the only one that will give me a guesstimate. What do we net per kid choice in for dollars, ballpark, prep?
The standard is about $5,000, but there's a special education factor in there as well,
Okay.
so it depends on the student.
Yeah, that is what it is.
And we've talked for a while about being sellers still, and we're still sellers, correct?
Oh, yeah, we're net positive still.
No, but I mean, we've got capacity.
We shut off some grades this year, so again,
Yeah.
looking at those class sizes.
I would say the lower grade levels, we don't, and
Yeah.
you mentioned this earlier, and I should have mentioned it. So we have had a couple of classes that have come through the last couple of years that were of 19 and 16, and next year is 19, and again, of school choice kids who do graduate.
Yeah.
And so we have not replaced in that big of numbers, but sometimes we get a lot of kids who in grade 9 knock on the door and say, hey, do you have room for us? And there's the area where we do have room, is the high school.
Where's our biggest net, student in, student out, at the grade levels at this school?
Again, it's probably a report we can probably download and send to you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to.
It's not dramatic in one place then?
I don't think it
It's
is,
not,
no.
okay, fair enough.
It'll come
Okay, all right.
different places, different times. So.
Maybe it's not the correct time. I think we'll leave your presentation on a positive note.
Okay. We like that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Do you have any follow-up?
Other questions, though? Other questions? Yeah,
I'll take that.
Okay, I'll just add my 2 cents.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, come on up.
Backing off of what Kelly said. So my daughter, my eldest, was one of the kids in the giant kindergarten classes, 28 students. She's on an IEP, she has ADHD. So now she's in 3rd grade. And in that time, I mean, what Brett said earlier on, we are still well below the average for state spending per student.
Right.
And below the average for area spending per student. And, I went into Douglas with a little bit of fear at that kindergarten level, but each step of the way, I feel like my faith has been confirmed. I see as a parent the effort being put in to helping students on an individual level, on a group level, testing out different types of curriculums. So based on what you said about middle school, I completely agree. Middle school going into high school makes a big deal, but I think it makes a big difference how you start off from the very beginning. I've got little kids, and as of now, I feel like it would be really easy for staff to sit back and say, hey, we're working with this budget. My friend who's teaching at that district is working with that budget, and kind of throw their hands up and do the bare minimum. And they just don't. They just do. It's like wine out of water, what happens in the school system. So I'm confident that everybody here, if we had a magic wand to, make wine into pounds of cash, would just say, yes, you may have all of your things.
Yeah.
But when we talk about need versus want, again, like a level service, well, if that's your need, that's still below average. And you just have a well of potential here that really pays off. My pre-K student who's in the public school, she knows about coding, she knows about social regulation. So I just, I always get concerned that somebody can watch these conversations and say, oh, we're getting all that money from grants, and look at all the new programs you have, you don't need more. But those programs matter, they make a difference. It's not, I just want to say it's not excessive. So the momentum moving forward is not saying, oh, we're going to be number 1, number 2, number 3 in the state. That's not what that is. That's continuing to grow at a level that makes parents feel good about staying. And I really think more importantly than that, helps students to learn and to be able to prosper in whatever area is best for them. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
There is a reason behind every single dollar in that budget.
There's a real process. I mean,
It's deliberated, it's judicious, it's
real process. We look at every penny.
Kevin, did I hear you say a few minutes ago that this ask for next year is, if you will, the last of the major incremental steps from your design plan that we talked about 3 or 4 years ago?
Right.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Right, and I think you were present, the charge I got from the Finance Committee and from the Board of Selectmen was, how are you going to make us competitive? How are you going to keep us competitive? And I think we've done that. This is an important piece to it. And then my sense is going forward is maintaining and keeping the stability and keeping the programs in place and the staffing in place. It will grow again. I mean, I think the animal and plant science piece could fall flat in its face, or it could be a real win for us as a district, because Matt was present, and you were at Doc Samples, and Josh was at Doc Samples' place, and they really wanted us, they were pushing us to become a new vocational school out here in the valley, because they saw an opportunity there. I wasn't ready to do all of that, and I'm not ready to do, I don't want to do large machinery, but I do want to give the kids the opportunity to do animal science, and we already had an articulation with the Orchard, we had an articulation with Southwick and with Tufts. Those have all gone by the wayside, but we would look to revamp all of those, so our kids would have the internship opportunity. And like I said, the horticulture and the community garden, and linking it to the special education program in the extended year, and turning that food around and bringing it to the town, for people with need. That's a win for everybody.
When we get grants, or do we publish that in the local newspapers? I noticed
We don't get
Uxbridge just had
we
a
don't
recent
get a-
article.
The local newspaper doesn't spend a lot of time with us.
But really, okay, because
Yeah,
Uxbridge just published, did
Yeah,
you see
we've-
that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they've
Oh, the
had,
Uxbridge Times?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
so I'm wondering if we do the same thing,
we've
that
sent,
that
we have
gets the
sent
word
articles,
out.
but they don't seem to make it into the newspaper.
I've sent 2 this year, and nothing, yeah.
Others do.
Contact?
Others do a lot.
Yeah, so, I mean, above the fold is reserved for Blackstone Valley Technical Vocational Regional High School.
We knew what you were talking about.
We're
On that
below
point-
the fold.
On that point,
At best.
I wonder, would it be appropriate, you've got a lot of clubs here, right,
Yep.
that you've added, and I
Yep.
think that's great, get
Yep.
kids doing extracurricular type of activity. Would it be appropriate to maybe look into like a media and a photography club where the students could put together some type of a Tiger News flyer or something and kind of self-promote a lot of these things? Hey, this is what we did, we got this grant money, this is how we put it together. They could take snapshots of the classroom environment, and kind of,
Great job for my creative communications course. So,
That's a great idea.
there you go.
Blogging.
Something like that could really pay dividends back in, broadcast that out to the parents.
Absolutely.
And get the students involved in creating it.
Another thing we did this year, Mr. Maines, I worked with him on something, and his admin put together, it's like a year in review kind of pamphlet.
And it's posted
that-
online.
Yeah, posted online.
I mean, I get all the
Wider
blogs and
distribution
stuff
of,
from,
Yep.
Mr. Bell, you
Yep.
you send out your elementary school blog. I get those
Yeah.
from my 2 students that are in that school
Right.
system and read through those. I
the
think those
blogs are
types are
good, but you
great.
get so much sometimes it's just gonna have a summary,
Right,
some things, of
right.
this is kind of what's going on, so I think.
Yeah, like a 1 or 2 page flyer,
Yeah.
Well, and also, like, you get the elementary school one, I assume you have elementary kids.
Right.
you know. I
Right.
get the high school one, I no longer get the elementary school
Yeah.
one. So-
Right.
So in some ways, it would be nice to have a
District-wide.
District-wide, exactly, yeah.
And they do get posted, right? They all get posted online. So they are all available.
Yeah, we're always
online.
so budget conscious, so we're kind of looking at these things on the cheap all the time. We might hurt ourselves by doing that, 'cause it might actually be worth whatever it's going to be, $3,000 to do a mailer on some of these things.
Or
I think
just
I'd
use the
really look
town
at that.
flyer, the town meeting flyer that we have twice a year, put in there, hey, this is an update from the school department. That might be an advocate way to
Yeah.
go doing it, because you're already there.
That's a great idea.
So,
I think we've been treading water so long.
I know, I mean, phenomenal, it's paid dividends.
When will we see you again?
I don't think there's any plans on it, but I'm happy to come back if you got.
When will we
follow-up.
see a final budget proposal?
Couple weeks.
Okay, and it will just magically include your final ask?
Again, we provide our asks to the town.
Yeah,
We now wait to see what
The
the town.
town,
is
the
gonna give us.
town,
it's going to give us for appropriation, and then we.
So what's our final number?
Yeah,
And
And
then,
then we'll have to work to figure out how to.
yeah, then we have to go,
So,
yeah.
well, we have this discussion too, and I never understand.
Yeah.
But you make an ask to the town has a number they propose, but what we've talked about is, that I still work with, we also have the ability to make an ask.
Yeah, so I would
Right.
ask that if you have your own recommendations,
Right.
that you
Right.
would work with the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator on that. But again, we understand that, we're working with finite resources here.
So that goes back to my question earlier then of, these numbers aren't final because of at least the contract.
right, it's a ballpark right now.
Yeah.
When the town gives you a final number, will that be post-approved contract, or you don't know?
We don't know that.
But it'll be a number, and you'll have to deal,
Yeah.
no matter which way the contract plays out.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
But again, like I did mention earlier,
Okay.
we did incorporate something in
okay,
there.
I see.
Right.
And the
Okay,
steps are already in
Placeholder,
there.
basically.
So there's
Okay.
something in there, so that,
Okay.
yeah.
okay.
Once we have that appropriation, we'll have to go back and figure out, again, we'll have better numbers on circuit breaker and better numbers on school choice at that point, and we'll see how much, if we can use any more there. And then we'll start going down and saying, okay, here's the things that we might have to cut, or, there's still a lot of work for us to do after that.
And back to this concept of competing proposals at town meeting, that would be when you would know which of the competing proposals would have been approved, if there were in fact competing proposals, correct?
Correct. I guess, yeah, we haven't dealt with that before, but,
Right.
yeah, if we, We would,
Right.
again, we'll have.
That's when you would know.
We will have our.
You're going to plan off the town
Yeah.
number, you have to, I
We'll
get
have our
that.
public hearing, and that will be based off of that appropriation, and that'll be in early April.
Okay.
Because, we'll have to start making decisions by
Okay.
then. If something different comes around, come town meeting, then we'll adjust to that
Got
at that
it,
point.
got it, got it,
But
okay.
we'll have to start.
And you'd have time with that to adjust,
And
just the way you
also-
did with the numbers here, okay.
And every year, and again, because of the financial situation, we've actually, kind of like what Jean said for many years, that you kind of deal with the budget in two, you've got the annual town meeting, and then you've got the special town meeting.
Right.
Kind of for us, we have our original food budget, and then over the summertime, before school starts, we close the books, we know what this, we know that, and then
Right,
we have.
right.
We reconvene.
I see that, I
It's
see
just- it's
that,
just like
right.
that. It's
Yeah,
just
so then August
what
is kind of our own
happens.
internal special town
Right.
meeting.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a good way of putting it, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
we saw the numbers were
Right.
up. And
Right.
Right.
And
Didn't
then
have a
that-
choice.
close the
Right,
books
right,
and-
right.
Right.
When we originally budgeted, we didn't budget for the kindergarten teacher, we budgeted
Right.
for the existing staff.
Right.
But as the summer wears on and more people are coming in,
Right.
now those numbers go
You
up.
have the
Now,
ability
don't
to do
have
that
choice,
adjustment, yeah,
And
okay.
that comes with
Okay.
paraprofessional.
You don't know
Okay.
final enrollment numbers until school starts, a couple
Right.
weeks before.
The more we know sooner, the better we are.
Oh,
So we're
yeah.
not making decisions that
Yeah.
we might regret later, but-
Well, your public meeting in April will be based on what the Board of Selectmen tells you is the number they're prepared to
we have at that
propose.
point.
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Okay, that helps a lot,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
Questions?
Thank you.
If I may, real quick, any questions, guys? You
Could I
waited a
jump
long
in,
time
Howard,
for-
real quickly
Sure.
and acknowledge the work of my administrative team? I mean, we are a true collaborating group along with Courtney, and with one laser focus, which is to continue to become competitive and improve what we have to offer. And there's no my mission, my vision, this is a collective group that has really worked really hard, and they are a huge part of the progress you've seen over the last 3 years.
And we appreciate that, I agree with that. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yep.
very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes,
Right.
9:17.
They're good, they're good. Right, that was good. Right, right. All right. That last 5 minutes. Okay, every minute.
Okay.
All right. You've always understood it.
Yeah, it's a
Right?
little
Yeah,
tricky
right.
to wrap your
If
head
they get their
around.
number from POS.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah,
No matter
and then
what.
they work off from that.
Right, and they have to.
Right.
And so all we would be doing is coming in with a different proposed number. that they
If
would
something
have-
was to change on the floor of town meeting.
Right,
And then
right.
they could go back and rework their numbers and say, okay, we don't have to cut this after all, or, yeah.
All right, so in the spirit of Brett's motion to adjourn, we've got a agenda here. Let's go back to that. Reserve fund transfers, Gene, anything?
There are none.
Excellent, nice job. Snow ice update? None, I haven't seen any. Excellent. Approval of minutes is going to be continued till the next meeting. Well done.
Which
All
one,
bus-
approval of minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
I just crossed it off the
Yep.
bond. I can't even read it anymore. Old business, new business. Next 2 meetings, March 10 and March 24.
March 10th, I'm looking to have before you, community development will encompass zoning board, conservation, planning board, and community development. I'm trying to have the building inspector and put a request out to Dr. Fitzpatrick from DET.
And I always want to have from Dr. Fitzpatrick's group their placement records for the previous year or the previous 5 years or both. Could I get that, please?
Their placement records?
Correct. Placement. College placement.
Well, I'd like to know academic, not college placement, I would like to know work placement. How many people they putting into the workforce of the amount that we spend twice as much to educate a kid over there?
Yeah, fine.
Well, how many plumbers and electricians are putting out there? Seeing the average age of a plumber and electrician is like 56 years old.
There you go.
I'd like to know if they could get us.
Who follows up on that request for me, or do I make that request myself directly to?
On your behalf.
You will?
If you want to send me an email.
Sure, yep.
The request for him to come before the finance committee comes from the town administrator's office
Okay.
through Suzanne.
Okay.
So I'll put that request in tomorrow, and then if there's anything that you want before the meeting, if you can get it to me by Monday,
Okay.
we'll make sure he has enough time
Okay.
to prepare that.
Will
I
Patrice
may.
be coming at a,
I will check with her. I know it's unfortunate she was out sick today. I will ask her.
So Jean, we're going to do 3, did we just say 310 and 324?
I did not say anything for 324.
Do we have anything we need to cover on 324?
We do. That would probably be hopefully health insurance.
Yeah, the health renewal.
Okay. All right.
Property casualty, I think we'll simply discuss the method we use to come to an estimate, because they never get it done in time.
Okay.
We'll just tell you what our claims
Yeah,
history is
telling
spending
me.
in our estimate.
Okay.
Those
All
are
right.
two really big ticket items.
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring the finance department's budget. There are no surprises there. I think it's going to be similar to the other ones.
Okay.
But you'll have it in front of you.
But 310 and 324 is what we expect the next meetings. Okay. I'm sorry.
So on top of your request for placements from
Right.
EVT,
Yeah.
I'd like to know graduations. I mean, it's great to get placed in a higher education system, but how many of them make it through? You know,
I don't know.
I don't
versus
know
how
if they
many
would
don't.
have that.
They do have attrition. They have attrition that comes
Yeah.
At
back.
the college level?
They have to have a
Oh, they definitely have it.
At
They
the
have,
college
like-
level?
college level, no.
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They wouldn't have that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Once
right.
they
You
only
mean
get
they
the
to
acceptances.
X,
Yeah, I mean,
and
But
they
their number is pretty
graduate.
high.
I don't think they, I
The
don't,
number going to college is really high,
Yeah.
which is exactly what you would not think from a technical school that's supposed to be placing people
Right,
into the
right.
profession.
right, right. That's what we, right?
I've been saying it for 10 years.
We all have.
I don't know what
I mean, my daughter goes.
I've been doing
she's-
jumping jacks on that for the last
She's
10
a
years. It's
sophomore
killing
there,
me.
and, but it was because we were going off the
Right,
cliff.
sure, sure.
You could not guarantee for the high school kids that AP classes were going to be
Right,
there.
sure.
And so we made a determination that was the best place for her to go.
Yeah.
So you looked at that as a prep school for college? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't look at it as a prep school for college. I looked at her
Did
to
you
be.
think she was going into a trade then?
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
No,
whoa, whoa.
Did you say a Prague?
She was just.
Train.
Oh, I was like, Prague, that's
What was
Prague,
being
isn't it? A
offered, and you
European
couldn't
country?
guarantee going forth, and for her to be competitive for college,
Then you just said that.
but it wasn't a,
For
it's
college.
not a prep school.
Because you wanted her to go to college. You wanted her to be.
I think we all want our kids to do better than what we have done when we went to school.
Right, but was that the idea of trade school? That's my thing.
Well,
The trade school has changed over the years. It's
Well,
been
yeah.
like
I think
everything
we've all-
else.
I think the perception is that the resources are going to those schools, so people are drawn to the resources. That's what I think. They don't realize that there's only half the amount of class time that there are from a full-time school. You know, because they have to do their, their career stuff as well.
Well, they're in school for 2 months.
they have
Yeah.
a
The
longer
options.
school year.
They have a
Yeah.
longer school year.
Yeah, no, I know there's
Right.
a little bit of a
The
balance there,
options are
but it's
better.
just,
Yeah,
coming
the
from Douglas
options,
Public for
absolutely.
college.
like you said,
100 colleges versus 40.
you said, there's a big
It just
gap
opens
in
more doors for them
electricians and
than
plumbers
what we
and all
could
that
have
other
gotten
stuff
here in
right now.
Douglas.
And we got all these new schools, and they're feeding what?
Okay.
You're not feeding them into it.
All right. So you're okay with, I'll send you the request,
Yeah.
basically just asking for college placements. I think Carol is suggesting a concept of work placements. I don't know that they have that.
They will have for the graduating class, for the previous graduating classes. They can go back a couple of years.
And tell you, so they,
Who went to military colleges.
they tell me the college part each year. I'm not sure if, if they're 80 Douglas or 40 Douglas kids graduating. Actually, I think they give us the global, the 13. I'm not sure if they then tell you X number went to college and here's the colleges, and Y number did not, and here's what trades they went in. I just don't know that they
They
break it
do
down.
have survey
They do a
for
survey.
kids who graduate. 'cause
Just like
Ben
they do
got
here in
one.
Douglas.
Okay.
And I read, well, because of course he didn't answer the
yeah,
questions.
yeah,
They sent it to
sure,
me, so I read the questions and they were sort of open-ended, like, what are you doing with your life,
Well,
basically. So they might have, if you can get the kid to answer is the thing,
Okay.
though. Is
You're
that
right,
mandatory?
right.
So but you might have a little bit of data on that.
An email to you, Matthew, on that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay. Yes.
I had sent an email to you and Jean, I think, a couple of weeks ago, because I had missed the meeting. I didn't expect any answer to it until.
I believe Matt did answer some of the questions.
I thought we answered them all as best
Yeah.
we could.
Okay, I don't remember getting any
I'll
answers.
take a look for that. Okay. All right.
So maybe it was,
I think you were looking for,
I'm a little sketchy on my
Yeah. A little-
skills, you know.
some of it is
so
not as easy as you.
Maybe I
think.
could have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
think
could
remember.
have, I could have lost, you know.
All right, we'll take a look at that.
Or I just didn't forward them to you because I have additional questions on it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Long story short, 10-year histories are difficult for us to do. 6 or 7
Right,
years.
right, I remember that.
We do because of
That
changes
answer came back.
chart of accounts.
And I believe I gave you a packet, a hard copy of the revenue and the snow and ice. I left it at your seat tonight, so.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking at something about trees.
Well, there was the budget.
What does that do?
I believe one of the questions was snow and ice in history, and that's in there, as well as some of the revenue questions.
Yeah, I saw the
So-
snow and ice thing, but I thought that was on the agenda, so I thought it was just an update, but I'll look
No,
through
that
it.
was, yeah, you may want to look through that.
Yeah, I don't remember getting an email back, that's why I say I just,
Okay.
so, yeah.
I'll take a look. I think I remember the response coming back. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Anything else, new or old business? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? You guys have it, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Anyone opposed?
Dick, this has to